Well, good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be back. George Morgan here at your service. It's PSGL, it's Wednesday night, it's Spain tonight as well. Lots on the table, lots of battling. The title contest is still alive and kicking. And Jack, it's only taken us 10 rounds. We're on the 11th. It's all to play for.
Boromant goes on the inside and takes the lead on the final lap of the race. Now it's side by side between Boromant and Warner, but Boromant's got the inside.
Here in this phenomenal race, Cameron Dowd looking to take P2 in his very first PSGL F1 PC race. Incredible to say the least. You see that beautiful lead. 1.5 seconds. DRS is the name.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to PSGL once again for round 4 of the E-Series Championship, where today we take to a track, Josh, that we haven't been to in quite a long time when it comes to league racing. And I don't think I've even been here in this game, even driving it. France, Paul Ricard, it got stripped, didn't it, last year of the F1 calendar, and it's kind of just disappeared.
Yeah, it's a fantastic circuit. Sometimes it doesn't create the best racing, but for me, it's got a little special place in my heart. I dearly, dearly do love this circuit. I think it's fantastic. It can create great racing in the game, and yeah, honestly, I just want to get into the lobby. To be quite honest with you, because it is fantastic. You of course have that very clunky, rising up the hill for turn 2. Although it doesn't necessarily seem like it's too much of a raise on the surface. You end up approaching turn 1, and then all of a sudden your car's sort of going over a mound to head back down before you end up trying to tackle the turn 3-4 chicane. It's a very technical circuit. There's so many different racing lines you could take. I just want to get in and see how these drivers adapt to this circuit, because it is utterly fantastic. Of course, you've got the long DRS straight as well, down the Minstrel straight. Surely we're going to be able to see some good moves there as well.
Indeed, especially in towards that chicane down at turns 8 and on. And also, we can sometimes see a few moves happening down in towards turn 1, which can be a bit scrappy because of the nature of that first corner, but it still delivers great racing either way. And we'll have a quick look at the lineups here for tonight, and we can see in the TF10 camp a bit of a new lineup. Turner Shame alongside Joel Marcados. I don't think Marcados has raced much on the PC side. I believe he was over in the PSI for quite a long time. So nice to see him over here in the PC, or at least in the PC a little bit more. Then in Ferrari, very, very strong lineup of Barry Boromant and Dylan Warren. Obviously, Dylan last season took multiple pole positions, took multiple podiums, and I think also took 2 wins. So he will definitely be a driver we're going to be keeping our eyes on. Race Clutch, Reese Linton and Joris Crozen. Veloce Academy with Leo Lund and Max Grospointner. RHD with Thomas Ronhart and Valentin Tyvard. F7R with Tiger Hardy and Nando Moreira. Novus Racing have Nico Benz and Nick Bonventa. TES have Nelson Alves and Fanat Moraviak. SRC have Louis Welch and Harry Lai. And finally, it's Williams who have Over Caraton and Ishmael Fassi. So yet again, Josh, very, very strong lineups going through and towards this race.
it's absolutely stacked. And I've had a little message with a couple of the drivers here and there. Dylan says he's not feeling as confident as he did last week. But then again, last week he said he wasn't feeling confident. He said he was a bit off the pace. He comes out of the gates, gets pole, gets a race win. Of course, this is a slightly different circuit to Monaco, so it could be more of a challenge for Dylan. But then again, you know, we've had the likes of Race Clutch say openly in the Discord they're feeling very confident. Of course, it's a home circuit for them, being a French esport team. We're going to be looking to try and put on a brilliant result here for themselves. Obviously represented in the Alpine car as well. So could be two birds with one stone there if they end up getting a great result here today.
Indeed, I think the race will be quite interesting around this circuit. Obviously, as we know, it's a track we haven't really raced on in this game. So with a full qualifying and a 50% race, there might be a little bit more for the drivers to get used to. That also depends on the weather, which we can see in just a moment. And we can see it is, of course, dry here for the French Grand Prix, especially in qualifying, which is brilliant. And, of course, I just saw in the chat there, Thomas says that was EOR. And I thought that just because I was thinking, when did Dylan Warren race an E-Series this season? Because I think it's his first one back. But you still make a good point.
No, the Monaco one over at EOR was his first race back. And it was a blinding performance there. And I had a word with him there saying, you know, what's gone on? Obviously, he has a new brake pedal, and then he comes out of nowhere, and he's just as good as new. He was back, full racing pace, absolutely flying over there. I'm very confident he's going to be able to do the same thing here tonight, even if he doesn't necessarily think so. So I'm already going to make my prediction.
Okay.
I think we're going to see Dylan Warren on pole, and then a Race Clutch driver in P2, and I'm going to say it's going to be Reese.
Well, that is bold. We've not even got through the start of Q1. No one's even been out on track, Josh.
I could just sense it. I've got that feeling.
Well, they'll be very happy with you, or very disappointed when both of them go out in Q1 because they crash. Thanks to you, Josh. So you've got you've got a lot being held against you at this point, and I believe one of the first will be, one of the Alpines, or Reese Linton, out first on track or out third on track behind the two F7Rs. Obviously running the Alpine on the intermediate tyres, which we always see at the start of qualifying sessions, just so everyone can test their equipment without wasting a set of the softs. But also, this circuit, Josh, the good thing is it's quite open, it's quite wide, meaning battles don't always instantly mean you're in a wall and you're going to be out. It also means that people can battle side by side.
Yeah, of course. And, you know, as I alluded to before when we was just talking about how many different lines you can take through some of the corners, it's a very open, very natural flowing track where if you do end up going too wide, you still have that room to race. You still have that room to sort of calculate your next sort of moves, especially in that third sector as well. The amount of up and overs you could potentially get in a battle is almost staggering because you're looking at the track map at the bottom right of your screen. You know, dare I say, you take a wide line into turn 11, you'll get the inside for 12, you'll be punished for 13, you'll get it back for 14, and then the hard braking point for 15 as well. You'll be back on the outside. It's one of those brilliant tracks where it just almost seems like you can race anywhere, and maybe that's part of the beauty. Maybe that's the reason why I like this circuit so much, because it is that level of competition.
Well, I can cast myself back to, I think it was 2 seasons ago. I think season 34 or season 33. Obviously, he was here F2 at France, and at one point we had drivers going 5 wide down the back straight. We had about 10 cars separated by a little bit less than a second. If Joshua Birch is watching, he'll remember that because it was a moment that afterwards we sat there and we thought, how is that physically possible? 10, 11 cars separated by less than a second going down the straight. It was chaos. But in the end, it worked quite well. Only one driver went off circuit. So, you know, we just proved that they can race hard and they can race generally quite fair around this track. But this first part of qualifying means absolutely nothing because they're on the intermediates, and half the time the drivers don't actually finish their laps. They just do the lap and go back into the pit. Some of them do, but I don't always see why. Because, well, I suppose some of them like a delta, but it's not always that necessary when especially you're going to be, maybe 5 seconds quicker than your delta time on the softs?
Exactly, but Nathan Richards, I can tell you exactly why the drivers decide to go out for just to complete a lap and have a little bit more track time. It's for the people watching. They know all of you lot in chat at this moment in time don't want to sit there and just stare at an empty garage. They're more than happy to go out and give it a little go. Very similar to what we are seeing F7R do, because instead of going for the traditional intermediate run, they've gone out on softs. We've seen this before from them so far in this series. They've been willing to go out on the soft compound tyre. They've been willing to risk a little bit more in qualifying. And you've got to think it's paid off relatively well, considering they've had back-to-back pole positions now.
Indeed, but that makes me think now, Are they struggling here to go out on the soft tyres? That's normally what we see some of the lower team, the lower down teams do in multiple different series, not just here in E-Series. So it makes me think, are they, a little bit struggling because they've gone out so early on the softs where everyone else, he's taking a little bit more time and losing a bit more of their session to go onto a set of intermediates. We can see Tugger Hardy coming through now in towards that final sector and hopefully doesn't get held up by one of the throwers and also one of the race clutches.
I've done a little bit of digging here. I've licked my finger and I've put it out my window. It's still terribly cold in Stoke, but apparently we're due for rain here in 29 minutes.
Oh.
So we could be looking at a wet Q3.
So is that why they've
Maybe
gone with their
that's
softs
why
now?
They've gone for softs, perhaps. If my trusty Stoke-on-Trent finger does not lie, it's going to be raining in half an hour. Mark my words.
And also, to join the two F7Rs on a set of softs is Barry Burrament. He's on circuit now on a set of the soft tyres. We'll pop the tyres on the screen, and everyone now is selected onto a set of softs, bar the two race clutches and Nico Benz, but Nico hasn't gone out on track, so I expect to see him go onto a set of soft tyres. So yeah, very different start to qualifying here for the French Grand Prix, but also it's a different circuit to many others. So we'll see what they can produce. But Barry, looking quite strong here so far, Josh.
Yeah, he's had a solid first sector, and of course we're going to have to keep an eye on the time trap here before heading into the braking zone. Yet again, another good result. Ferrari haven't found themselves in that dominating position they found themselves in last season. They've sort of been struggling as of recent, but again, it's not just been indicative of here at E-Series. We've seen it in other tournaments, in other championships, as I mentioned previously, of EOR. And they've been able to sort of get a rebound there. So I'm expecting them to definitely build up a little bit of a rebound as we're starting to see a couple of those lap times creep down further and further. This time it's Harry Lyatt of the SRC outfit as well, which are still having, dare I say, an absolute stellar debut season here at E-Series. Currently P2, just a handful of points off the back of F7R, and having these two community teams up towards the front, it's certainly thrown a little spanner in the works from what we was anticipating with our early season predictions.
Yeah, indeed. I think, I expected S7R and SRC to do well, but I wouldn't quite say sitting 1 and 2 well. I think that is definitely kind of a little bit like IRR Aston Martin. We didn't expect them to be sitting third in the standings at the start of the season, but there they are. So, a brilliant job here from SRC and, of course, F7R, who have the lead of the championship. But Williams Esports, they've gone a little bit unnoticed because they're sitting in third. They're best of all the esports teams, but they haven't really been noticed for it. They haven't really been dominating. They haven't really been at the full top the whole time. So I think one thing that Williams are showing here, along with the likes of Wraith, which is that consistency. They're consistently in the points of Dylan Warren, goes up to the top there with a 28.613, and crucially, Barry Burrament went back into the pits. So yeah, you can still see drivers a little bit unsure on whether they're setting their laps or not. Barry was on a decent lap. He was purple on my screens, but went back into the pits.
Yeah, perhaps he just wasn't necessarily too happy about it. But as you mentioned, Williams, Alvaro Carreton comes across the line for provisional pole out this Q1 session. But we're going to see Ismail Fassi here setting a lap time on the board. And it would have been a 1:28.439 if it wasn't for the validate. Oh, no, he did get a 1:24.39. I apologise. I thought he validated coming out the final corner there. I'm not sure what the red I was seeing there was at the corner of my eye. But no, you mentioned they've not necessarily, set the track alight. They've not put blazing lap times in, snatching pole positions and running off and dominating with wins. But they've been there and they've been consistent and they've consistently bought in that haul of points as they've done almost, on a weekly basis here with every single round. And it's really paid dividends for them in the championship, as you mentioned. Ahead of, the rest of the other esport teams as well. It's certainly something they're going to be looking at, but you do have to wonder, when are they going to really unleash the hounds, so to say, and really let these drivers go for it? And put up those lap times, which they are very much capable of, instead of kind of holding them back on the leash, just making sure they've got a little bit more in reserve for when it comes to the end of the season, because it's going to get to a point now where they're going to maybe start sweating a little bit with the likes of SRC and F7R putting in brilliant results, yet again on a weekly basis. Slightly more inconsistent, but they're always there or thereabouts. When do they decide to flick the switch and really decide to go for it?
Well, I think they need to go for it now because it is 11 rounds. It is a little bit longer than in the past, but no Satan tool on any community team, but the last thing an esports team wants to do, an F1 recognised team, is to lose to a community team. They don't want to do that at all. They pump in a lot more money, resources, drivers. So the last thing they want to do is be shown by people who don't have that, don't have the facilities to normally perform as well. So I can see these esports teams now putting a lot more pressure, trying to get some more, bigger driver lineup. We've seen like what we've seen at Ferrari. We've seen Dylan Warren and Barry Burman. I'd say Dylan is probably, along with the likes of Iswan Pookie, one of the most best performing drivers in the Series Championship. We saw him back in season 2. I think it was season 1 when he took part with CF10. He bounced them up the standings. Then obviously with Ferrari last season, him and Isvan were unstoppable the whole season. So I think Ferrari have also decided, right, we need to get someone we know can perform well in E-Series, get him into the lineup. He's got his new pedals, and he's just got to try and get on with it and see what he can do. I think Dylan's got the pace to win races again here. It's been a shame not to see him for the past few months, or I suppose the past few weeks in league racing, but it's great to see him back. So I think he can do a decent job. But look at the standings right now, or I should say after the qualifying grid right now, we've got TES sitting 5th and 8th. They need that. They need to keep that, don't they? Because they're on 35 points. They're nearly 100 back off of F7R. They can't. There's no excuses there, is there really?
No, I mean, you can blame a bit of misfortune here and there for it, but you've got to really try and find back luck yourself. And TES have just seemed to always get on the bad side of Lady Luck, and I'm not sure what it is. I'm not sure whether the team could potentially be cursed, but they certainly, their demeanour when they end up coming to these qualifying sessions, they always have a good performance in Q1. But then it's almost as if the other teams decide to try and step up the pace a little bit. And they try and step it up, but they overstep. They end up, catching onto these track limits. They end up causing these little mistakes here and there, which puts them slightly further down the grid in the race. And then when it comes to the race, they just find themselves in a bit of no man's land. They always find themselves getting caught up in incidents, caught up in, necessary battles that you don't really want to have with the likes of some of these drivers, which you mentioned before, with the likes of the Ferrari drivers and Williams drivers who end up getting eliminated a little bit earlier on in the qualifying session from, mistakes here and there. Because once again, all these drivers are really trying to push the limits. When it gets into that Q2 window, they don't wait until Q3 anymore. They'll take Q1 with a little bit of ease, but when it gets to Q2, that's when they really start piling on the pressure to really try and compete and put good lap times in. And by the time it gets to Q3, you can start seeing a bit of that fatigue coming into play with the drivers who end up just barely scraping through out of Q2. Because quite often the drivers which end up, P10, P9, P7 through the Q2 struggle to really try and push that forward into Q3, as we're going to start seeing a couple more lap times hopping up on the board. We've got Reese Linton and Barry Burman putting in P1 and P4 respectively, having a nice little Williams filling in the sandwich there.
Indeed, and I'm on board here with arguably the quickest driver on the F1 73 game being Thomas Ronhaar, as his teammate Valentin Tarvard up to second with a 28.3. We'll see what Thomas Ronhaar could do. He's been a bit of a saviour, hasn't he, recently for RHG? They had a very poor opening with an 18th and a DNF, I believe it was, or 18th and 19th. Then since then, obviously, Ronhaar's jumped in for a couple of rounds, got them some wins, got them some decent points. He's looking to do the same again here tonight. And we'll see what he can do as he goes up towards the top. And he goes straight to the top there by over a tenth of a second to Reese Linton with a 128.197. And with Valentin Tarvard back on performance, this is brilliant. Valentin, we're not going to sugarcoat it. He hasn't been performing where we've seen him in the past, obviously back on the past games. I'd say he's been, he's definitely performed a lot better. So it's nice to see him up in third. He's got some pace here to deliver around France. And having two drivers contending for a podium or contending for pole is something RHG need tonight, because they shouldn't be down in P6. They've got, arguably, in my eyes, one of the best teams there is in esports. The drivers they got, the development, the fact they've got an F1 driver who owns their team. They've got a little, they've got a bit of bragging rights, which I think they're now looking to try and really bring into form now.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, having that big backing doesn't hurt in the slightest for RHG. And I really want to know who you're debating with, that Thomas Ronhaar's not the quickest on this game, because to me, he's been far and away one of the most consistent, one of the most quickest drivers we've seen so far in F1 23. And it's always a pleasure getting to commentate over him. It's always a pleasure getting to watch him race as well. I want to know who doesn't have that opinion. I really do, Nathan.
Well,
who have you argued with? Come on.
The thing is,
listen,
the thing is, they're all that close together at the top. I'd say Thomas is definitely one of the quickest, but you can't ignore the likes of Jarno Otmir and Lucas Blakely. Obviously, Lucas doesn't race as much at this point, but we know when he switches on, he's one of the quickest. So we can't ignore those, and I don't think it'd be fair for me to say this driver is the fastest, because they all have advantages on different circuits. There's circuits where Thomas is absolutely clear, but there's also circuits where he can sometimes not even get a podium, or he might struggle to get a podium. So, yeah, I think it's hard to call someone the fastest, and also, I don't want to make enemies. We know F1 esports fan base can get quite high rated, so it'd be better to try and level the waters a bit and be on everyone's side.
Well, I'll tell you a very safe pick. If you're looking to make a qualifying prediction at any point during the session, by the way, Nathan, would be Nico Benz. Now, of course, still not left for garage.
Yeah.
Dare I say there's a good reason for that.
Why? Because
dear.
why would he? Is it going to rain now? Is the question. Because why is he? Why is he not gone out? Tony O'Shea did go out, but obviously he had an invalidation on his lap. But it seems a bit weird for Nico not to really make much of a murmur out of the pit lane. And is it going to rain like now, Josh?
Telling you something now. My finger's still dry, mate. It's not raining.
Oh,
I'll
Nico's
tell you that
out.
much.
Talking about him, he's gone out on circuit.
There we go. Well, like I was saying before, I was asked to be a weatherman for it's a part-time job, by the way, here at PSGL. It's going. If we're looking for a weatherman, if you feel like you've got, the ability to fill in for being a weatherman, please apply over on the Discord. But no, he's a ridiculously quick driver, isn't he? And it's a bit of a miracle that he's not been able to score more points in this series. He set the joint quickest lap time in the qualifiers with, of course, Richard Sproggers all the way back in Suzuka, which feels like forever ago. But he's a very quick driver, and I can't understate that enough. We see him in the qualifying sessions. Over the course of one lap, he's phenomenal. Finds himself more than often in the top end of that Q3 bunch. And when it comes to a race as well, he's very good as well. He's got the racecraft, he's got the ability. But it's just, a couple of these drivers here and there who might have a little bit more experience always seem just to find themselves coming out on top in these, really close race scenarios with the strategy as well. So, my argument here is Nico Benz could be one of the outright paciest drivers on this game. He just needs that tiny bit more experience.
I can't say I disagree. I think Nico, from where he's come over from being, I believe, on the Xbox over now to PC, he's 13. He's probably the youngest driver on this grid. I think, back when Cameron Daves was racing on PC in F2, he was also 13 at the time. He was one of those where everyone was kind of looking at him being like, this could be the next big driver. Obviously, he's kind of said he's not as motivated to get to esports, that's why he's moved on to PlayStation and had a little bit more of a calmer, journey. But Nico is a driver that very young. He's got lots of talent. He's racing here in the E-Series. He's getting himself a lot of exposure to esports teams. The only thing stopping him from getting development seats is the fact of he's so young. Companies can't really always work with it, can they? In that sense.
No, it's one of those things, right? I mean, take for example, I know you've been playing a lot of Football Manager, right? You can't always sign a 14-year-old on a professional contract. And it's just one of those things that Nico Benz, give it a couple of years' time, I'm sure we'll be seeing him in the Formula One esports series, whatever they decide to call it. And hopefully we'll still be seeing him at PSGL, maybe in F1, maybe still in E-Series, always coming in and competing, regardless of whatever team he's representing, because he's a phenomenal young talent. And if we do have any engineers or any team representatives here who are looking perhaps to try and get a young talent back into their team, are really trying to push it forward their young driver cycle, look no further than this young man. He's absolutely phenomenal. He's very mature for his age as well. He understands what role he plays in. He's never caught up in silly incidents. He's just always there. And it's just that presence. It's very much Jenson Button-esque.
Indeed, and
he's got a lot of pace, and he's always there.
He has, but we'll just ignore the fact he's down in 20th at this current time. I'm going to switch off Nico because I don't want to do what we did to Leo Lund. Remember in Baku when we cursed Leo Lund heavily by saying he was a brilliant and he crashed at the castle?
Not sure you're right.
But one driver who I'm looking at now is Tiger Hardy. He's in P9 at the moment, but he's a 10th down in his first sector, I believe, at the moment. So it's not looking like the best for that for him, but I still think he's still safe to get himself into Q2, isn't he, on that 128.5, as now the check of lag has gone to 0, Josh. The ending could be quite severe for many, as we can see Nico Benz go up to P4 there. Brilliant lap time from the MVR driver. Knocks Nando Moreira into the drop zone, and S7R have been the strongest team so far in this series. So to see one of those possibly be out in Q1 will be a big surprise, as Nick up into third there with a 3.15. Yoris up into the top 10 with a 0.481. There's still many names here, Josh, that could definitely go out in Q1 now.
Yeah, Dylan Warren only P12 as well. It's getting a little hot under the collar over here, isn't it, for a couple of these teams? Of course, you've got the TF10 duo as well. We've got Joel coming across the line for a 10th improvement. It's not quite enough. And Tony Richet's invalidated his lap time, so Tony won't be able to improve his lap time either. So that'll be one TF10 car out, which isn't exactly what we're going to be looking for. But of course, we've still got more drivers coming across the line. Tycho Hardy only 15th. Louis Welsh can't improve on his lap time. He'll be starting P19, which is a huge shock for the SRC outfit. And that'll be down to whether Nando Moreira can save anything at all from his Q1 session for F7R, because otherwise they're facing a double elimination, as Ismail Fassi puts in the fastest lap time, showing run high. He still has a little bit of competition. Nando Moreira coming up to the line. He's got no more battery to deploy.
Ooh.
And he gets himself barely through P14.
And well, second in the championship, SRC, 16th and 19th going through into this Grand Prix. But crucially, S7R aren't looking strong. Our championship leaders on 117 points have got Tycho Hardy, their best performing driver this season, starting 17th, and Nando Moreira in P40 at the moment. He's also having a big struggle. So going through and towards this race, Williams will be loving this because they look strong. Overall didn't improve on his lap, and at the top it was Ismail Fassi with a 0.15. So going into this here, wow. Williams could be looking to try and top the standings here, as they've been looking very, very strong indeed.
Yeah, dare I say it's all up for grabs here out of that Q1 session. But of course, we do have to say goodbye to 5 drivers for now before we welcome them back on the starting grid. And those drivers are going to be the SRC driver, Harry Lai in 16th place, Tycho Hardy, 17th place for F7R. We've got Joel Marquardt, P18 for the TF10 outfit, and then we've got Louis Welsh for SRC down in P19, and then of course Tony Richet, he wasn't able to put in a valid lap time in the qualifying session. It's certainly not going to be something you want to see, and it's certainly nothing which will help their confidence looking forward. But if they do have anything to take away from that in the slightest, there was only half a second covering the entire grid.
Indeed, it was definitely very close going through in towards the end of this qualifying, considering many drivers also didn't have many improvements on their lap time. So if they all made improvements, we would have seen a way closer grid coming out of Q1 and going into Q2. But obviously Dylan and I think it was Harry who was 16th. They was only separated by about a hundredth of a second. So very, very close between those two, and Dylan just about scraping through in towards Q2. I think we need to stop talking about him because we say he was doing brilliant and he barely made it through in towards the second part of qualifying. But the weird part was, end of Q1, the track was getting darker. The overcast was more clear, but now it's gone back sunny. So the weather's playing with us here. But it's a little bit like being in England. We're thinking, oh, it's going to rain soon, and then it goes back to being sunny.
I do have a little bit of an insight for us about the weather. Once again, honestly, at this point, I reckon ITV should probably get me on to do the weather for them. But we do have an approximation here that it'll be a chance of light rain in 10 minutes' time. Perhaps that might be the reason why every single driver has decided to go for their outlap all at the same time here.
Which means now we could have a one-lap shootout for Q2, which is a big shame because many drivers like to have 2 runs in Q2, or maybe even 3, not 1. It's not like Q3 where you have 1 run, it's normally multiple. So a big shame for many drivers that normally like to get themselves settled in to this session. So, well, we could see quite a surprising end to Q2 here, depending on who can get the lap times in. But a team that I'm keeping my eye on now are TES. Frank Mraviak, 3rd in Q1. His teammate Nelson Alves, I think, was around P10. They're considerably off the top 9 at this point. They're 15 points back from Nova's Racing, so they need points. If they can get a double top 10 finish here, they're going to jump up a lot more. Maybe not in position, but in terms of points and get closer to those top guys, more than many people would expect. Because if you look in that mid pack, you got TF10, Veloce, RHG, and Ferrari separated by 14 points. There's not a lot in it. So if TES can get themselves back in themselves 30-ish points, they can jump up to within that top 5 range. So, you know, they've got a lot of work on them tonight. Nelson, we haven't seen for a while, but he drove in challenges back in the last game. He's also arguably one of the quickest Portuguese drivers that there is in F123. If I've offended anyone by forgetting one of the other fast Portuguese drivers, I'm very sorry. But from what I've seen, he's definitely one of the quickest. And also, Franek, he's also one of the quickest Polish drivers on the game.
Yes, it's definitely a continental team, to say the least. I mean, realistically, they're both fantastic drivers who have obviously had, different experiences coming up through the world of sim racing, but both of them find themselves equally matched here and well deserved to be in the E-Series lobby here and definitely guarantee their place, in the E-Series lobby here. And definitely guarantee their place, in the E-Series lobby here. And definitely guarantee their place, in the E-Series lobby here. And definitely guarantee their place, in the E-Series lobby here. And definitely guarantee their place, in the E-Series lobby here. And definitely guarantee their place, in the E-Series lobby here. And definitely guarantee their place, in the E-Series lobby here. And definitely guarantee their place, in the E-Series lobby here. And definitely guarantee their place, in the E-Series lobby here. And definitely guarantee their place, in the E-Series lobby here. And definitely guarantee their place, in the E-Series lobby here. And definitely guarantee their place, in the E-Series lobby here. And definitely guarantee their place, in the E-Series lobby here. And definitely guarantee their place, in the E-Series lobby here. And definitely guarantee their place, in the E-Series lobby here perhaps to change the way their story's going so far in the season and try and elevate themselves in the standings just a little bit. But one thing I'm slightly concerned for is if this prediction for rain is correct, if the good old Stoke-on-Trent finger has predicted it correctly, there could potentially be time for them to do 2 laps on the soft tyre. We're looking at 8 minutes, and if we think most of the drivers are now starting their lap, we'll say what? 1:30, give or take, for both laps to get back round and go for an out lap. We're looking at 4 minutes 30. They could potentially get just enough time if that rain is just slightly delayed. They can find themselves being able to get in 2 soft runs here. But certainly someone who won't necessarily mind it too much will be the likes of Alvaro Carreton, who is currently blazing this circuit so far with brilliant sector times. And you can see just by the way this little Williams car is handling itself going through this high downforce, high G corner. It's absolutely glued to this circuit, isn't it? It's fantastic to watch the cars take these corners at such high speed. The ground effect sucking the car in, the downforce pushing it down as well. Absolutely no sign of slide from Alvaro Carreton's Williams, and it's fantastic to see him have so much confidence being able to fling this car in through that final sector. But he's going to come up to the line now. We'll be able to see, is he going to be able to go quicker than the Q1 time, or is the track just getting that little bit colder? A 1:28.2.
A decent lap time, and then Nico Benz a 28.0. That's a brilliant lap time there from the MVR driver. Leo Lund into third with a 0.436. Got a few cars still left to come through. The 2 Ferraris. Barry into third. Where does Dylan manage to go to? He goes up into fourth there, just about a tenth back from his teammate because we've got a mistake somewhere. I know, I think it's someone just slowing down. But we've got some more cars coming through, and Ron Hart to the top with a 27.859. A brilliant lap time there from him indeed. And then we've got Ismail Fassi just ahead of his teammates into third position, and Max Gross points up into P7. We've got the 2 TESs coming through as well. Nelson Alves, what can he set? He's down to P14 as Valentin Tava goes into P6. Nelson meet P9, but obviously Franek and Nick didn't finish their runs, meaning now the drop zone. That is a big drop zone. Joris, Dylan and Leo. We've got Veloce Academy, Ferrari and Race Clutch possibly being out of qualifying here, depending what the weather does in the next few minutes. But nothing can stop at the front. The likes of Thomas and Nico. But Thomas's lap, what's that? 2/10 quicker than P2, that's a lot.
Yeah, especially when you're considering it was 5 tenths from P1 to P20 in the Q1 session. And now moving into Q2, 2 tenths of that is now between P1 and P2. It really just goes to show how talented all these drivers are and just how exceptional of a talent Thomas Ron Hart is. Obviously, in that Sauber Esport team and in the Sauber car, he's finding his pace. Dare I say, every single time he steps his foot into his rig at this point, it's phenomenal to watch. But I'm sure there'll be a little bit more of a challenge from the likes of Nico Benz, Riesland and Ishmael Fassi as well. Come back Q3 session, perhaps. You know, they were taking it a little bit easy, just making sure they had a bank of time on the board before trying to go for their second run, as I've mentioned. But with rain coming out at this point, predicted at 3 minutes, it'll be very, very tough as we can see the clouds once again getting darker and darker. Nico Benz retired from a session. He believes his 28 flat is safe, and at this point, I might be inclined to agree with him. But we've got Franek Morawiak and Nick Boventre coming out of the pit lane now. But is it going to be a little bit too late for them? Are they end up going to catch a couple droplets on the end of their flying laps?
Because look at this weather. The track has changed instantly again, like what we saw at the end of Q1. The track already looks like it's going to start raining probably within the next 30 seconds. It might not be that quick, but it looks like it's going towards that. So Franek and Nick have got to get themselves moving. They can't afford to have a very slow 8 lap. They've got to push, push and push. Before this rain hits, I think we know now the rain probably will hit because it's, you know, the weather's changed so dramatically in the past 2 or 3 minutes. But obviously, I think everyone in that top 5 is probably safe. Those a little bit further down might be under a little bit of pressure depending on what times Nick and Franek can do. We'll have a look at the MVR driver of Nick Bonvent now heading down towards turn 1. And MVR yet again, Josh, a team that aren't performing too well, but they've, you know, recently, and it started raining already, Josh. It is already raining on circuit before it hits turn 1. Franek and Nick might be in a spot of bother.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be a tough one for him. But as you mentioned, MVR, once again, another one of these teams which, you know, have not had the right sort of luck, have they?
No.
They've been unfortunate. They've got very quick drivers. They've got a brilliant engineering team over there as well. But to me, it's a bit of a surprise to see them where they are in the standings. Realistically, I would have thought they would have been, you know, up there with the likes of TF10. And originally at the start, I was thinking that SRC and F7R would be battling the likes of TS and MBR. But again, it's just two polar opposites, isn't it? You've got one side which has ended up getting a little bit of fortune, a little bit of luck, and then you've got the other side which seems to have got absolutely none so far. But of course, this is only round 4, and a lot can change. Potentially, we could maybe even see one of these teams jumping up, trying to fight for a 4th or maybe even a 3rd in the championship. It really just goes to show. But as you can see now on your screens, that rain is coming down. Weatherman Josh is going to be an alter ego. We're going to put that one out there because so far prediction certainly doesn't look wrong. But I'll tell you something, it does look like they've gone out on the wrong set of tyres at this point because the track is glazed up right now. Looks like a donut you would find from a Krispy Kreme shop at this point. It's very, very icy, very greasy, and certainly isn't going to be much fun to drive on, especially considering you're paying £10 for a single donut. What are half of you lot doing?
Yeah, this isn't going to be the best lap at all, is it, from Nick? You can see he's in the 31s, the
Yeah.
32s. It'll be a 33.0. Franek and Nick are definitely out of this session, and Franek's already gone wide, so we know that his softs definitely aren't happy with these conditions. But we look through at drivers on laps, they're going out on soft for some reason. Leo, Dylan, Joris gone out onto a set of soft tyres, even though they know the track is wet. Now the question is, why? Because, well, I'm starting to think now, if that's the case, is it going to be a wet Q3, but as they've waited a set of softs because they know they're not going to be good enough?
I mean, it very much does look that way. I'm not going to sugarcoat it to you, Nathan. I'm not going to sugarcoat it to you either, Track. It says it'll stop raining in 60 minutes.
Oh.
If this is correct, we're going to have a wet Q3.
Yes.
Now, is it going to elevate it from light rain to heavy rain during that time? We're going to have to wait and see. Approximately, it's going to be 10 minutes before the heavy rain, so we could potentially see intermediates being used for the start of Q3, and then the drivers who want to try and risk it, who may have had a lap time invalidated, to go out on a set of wet tyres towards the end. But again, you know, it's a risk, and someone who's certainly battling a risk at the moment is going to be Dylan Moran, out in that Ferrari car, currently finding himself P12. Dare I say, it's near impossible to improve your lap time in these conditions, still on a slick compound. And you can see how much he's battling that Ferrari car. It doesn't want to point in the right direction at all. Is it an opportunity missed here for the likes of, you know, Joris currently in P11, Dylan in P12, Leo in P13? You would have to think so.
Yeah, indeed. It's gonna, well, the bottom 5, I'd say at this point, you know, it is quite a shame to see lots of Leo, Dylan and Joris go out. Obviously, Nick as well and Franek, they haven't looked the strongest, you know, in the past, but tonight they have both looked strong. They both put brilliant lap times in at the start of this session. So, you know, this is definitely a big 5 to go out in qualifying. But one thing I'm great to see is Valentin Tarbard up into the top 6. We know he hasn't been performing well. We said it earlier on, but he's been looking even more comfortable. Now he's got himself secured comfortably in towards Q3. RHG could be on a big haul of points here tonight, along with the likes of, well, I was going to say Ferrari, but, you know, Barry's got the P17. Yes, we know he can improve, but Dylan being out is going to struggle. But then again, we know Dylan with his race pace, I would say arguably one of the best on the game, one of the best in this grid when it comes to that racecraft. He can start in P20 and finish in the top 3, a little bit like Thomas Ronhar. If we look back last season, Josh, you'll remember it. You'll know exactly what circuit I'm going to talk about.
Yes.
Monaco, last to P3 in 10 laps or something, or 20 laps on intermediate tyres in Monaco. For anyone to do that, they are a generational talent.
In full wet conditions, I need to remind you, chat, this was completely full wet. He was one of the only drivers who went on a set of intermediates right from the start. He made 13 overtakes in the first 3 laps around Monaco. If that doesn't tell you something about the racecraft of Dylan Moran to be able to get through the cars in a manner where he doesn't damage his front wing, under those conditions where everyone's struggling for a bit of grip, you can expect something out of him in this race. But of course, is the race going to be dry? We don't know. Perhaps a little rain, dare I say, could potentially cause a little bit of chaos here, there, everywhere. So I thought I'm very much looking forward to it, and I'm sure Franek Morawiak on this intermediate compound of tyre is feeling a lot happier than he did on the softs earlier when he was trying to get those through to do a lap. And potentially we could see Franek jumping up here into P14 if he's able to keep it on the track, and if those inters are going to hold up just a little bit better than the softs did as well, because of course you've got to remember Nick set that lap on the soft compound tyre when that first sector was still dry.
Of course, and obviously we can't hate them for going out and wasting time in the qualifying because we know no one's going to make any improvement. But you might as well go for it on the inters. You never know if it's going to rain in the actual race. So if you can have a quick run, just see what the intermediate tyres like, just so you can kind of mess around with your setup, try to see what diff and what brake bias is best for your car. You might as well. You might as well try and figure all of that out right now. But we can see from Iconi's lap, you can see the track is sodden wet. We're not close to the wet tyres yet, but we are going to get closer to it. I don't think we'll hit it by the end of Q2, but you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if we get it in towards Q3. You can see Frank now heading down in towards turns 8 and 9 at that chicane, Josh, which is a bit of a talking point in the sense of Carnage is that chicane. Literally, that is that chicane's been named Carnage because you have drivers sending moves back, and with the track having like 100,000 layouts, people sometimes forget where to brake, and they turn early or they go too late.
Yes, I mean, especially these sort of conditions where all of a sudden those red and blue lines, which you can quite visibly see from the cockpit point of view in the dry, all of a sudden just look like a very bright grey colour. You can't really tell which ones are where. You can't necessarily see where the racing line is, and of course you've got so many different layouts of the circuit as well. There's a whole potential for drivers to maybe get a little bit confused here and there, maybe go on the brakes 5-10 meters earlier, which could be the difference between getting pole and being P10 on a grid as competitive as this as well. But I do have a funny story as we're going to see Franek coming across the line there, not able to find a lap time to get him in a competitive region to nick there, unfortunately for him. So it does look like he'll be starting from P15 on this race. But I do have a funny story about turns 8, 9 on this circuit. Do you want to hear it?
Well, we've got nothing else to talk about, so why not, Josh? Go for it.
Well, once upon a time, when I was a little bit younger, I dabbled in a bit of sim racing. I dabbled in a bit of league racing. I wasn't quick enough for PSGL, so I went to a lesser league, a very small one, and I read the rulebook, and it said it's fine to give slipstream to a teammate. It's all a-okay. So there I was, crafting my master plan in my head, thinking, right, how am I going to be able to benefit the most off of slipstream here? I thought, right, I'm gonna get the slipstream off my teammate first.
Yeah.
I'm gonna flat turn 8 and turn 9. I'm just gonna go off the road and I'm just gonna cut it entirely, take the track invalidation, dive it back into the pits, so then on his in lap he can give you the slipstream and do the same thing. We did that. We comfortably got 3 runs in the qualifying session with time to spare. And then we got drastically told off for corner cutting and taking advantage of the track. Don't do it. It's not worth it, chat.
Well, the thing is there, Josh, I would say anyone with a mind would also agree with the league. You should not have cut the circuit. The circuit's there to drive on, not... you don't just start playing rallycross on blue and grey and red lines, because we know that the off-track part of the circuit, the grip is not there. It's like driving on Las Vegas. There is absolutely nothing of grip because of the paint being horrible to drive on. So you should have learnt your lesson, Josh. And I presume you didn't do it again when you raced at France. If you ever raced again, that is, of course.
See, the thing is, with turns 8 and 9, it's obviously the chicane down the main straight. So there's tarmac there. There's no paint.
Well.
So I did it again the next time we went to France. Would you believe it or not, I got told off again. Then I decided I'm no longer going to do that around France. Then all of a sudden, that's when I swapped over to endurance cars, where they do have that complete straight layout with no chicane there.
Yes, and you seem to show that by your skills in Silverstone when you try to deny me a podium. You fought me that hard you forgot to pit. How can someone forget to pit on lap 14 of 15?
Right. There's 120 people at this point in the chat. If I'm in an absolute dogfight, it's okay to forget to pit. That's understandable. Chat, please agree with me there. But that does round out the Q2 session. Now I've had all the drivers retire from the session. We get to do a little less waffling. And once again, we've got Thomas Ronhart in the cybercar, leading the way. Followed by Nico Benz, Reese Linton, Ishmael Fassi, Alvaro Caraton, Valentin, Barry Burremand, Max, Nelson Alvarez, Nando Moreira in the top 10, all of getting that soft compound tyre in. And then, of course, we do have to say goodbye to Joris, Dylan, Leo, Nick, and Franek for the remainder of this qualifying session. It's
Wow.
not really up to the drivers at that point, was it? It was more down to the weather and
Well,
what the gods deemed.
the worst part was, looking at the gap there, Nando and Joris are separated by 0.02 of a second. 0.02 of a whole second is what denied a Q3 appearance for Joris and a crucial Q3 appearance for Racecook, who kind of need that. They're in fourth in the standings, but with the fact of F7R and
yeah.
SRC not having the best qualifyings, when it is absolutely sodden wet, Josh. I'm sorry to completely cut off my point, but it looks like a storm.
Well, dare I say, my little weather app I've got says storm.
Wait, it actually classifies it as a storm.
It does. We've got the lightning bolts. We're going to see the heavy wet tyres, and we're still going to see him struggle to get any sort of traction here. But chat, as well, okay, hold on. Ben Price got a brilliant point both of us missed there. Nathan, we're going to be slapping ourselves.
What?
8 different teams have got through into Q3.
And that is that's brilliant.
Very good spot there, Ben Price. Well done.
Right, you could take Josh's job, Ben. That's fine by me.
Hey, I'm just saying, double up as a weatherman. I can give you a forecast. Never know, but no. Thank you very much, Ben, there for the information. But also, what I want to hear from everyone in the chat now is going to be, who do you think is going to be able to put it on pole position here? Nathan Richards, go on, give us a name.
Well, this is hard to predict because literally there's nothing to go off. We saw intermediate tyres, dry tyres, and the top 10 is probably a bit mixed up more than we thought it would have been. Well, for pole position, Nico Benz, NVR, why not? They can go for it. They've got a Haas, last time, hang on, perfect. We're not the same track, but Brazil. But ignore the fact it's France. Q3, it starts raining, and Kevin Magnussen was on pole. Nico Benz, he might be about 20 years younger. It might not be on the same track, but the correlation's there. Haas and wet weather equal pole position. That is the formula, and that is why Nico Benz is going to be on pole position, and let's just hope it doesn't happen in the race what happened to Kevin Magnussen.
I agree with Groot Steve in the chat saying Ron Hard, to be honest with you, mate. Feel like you're... Do you have a little meme where they've got like a red string and we're trying to pin it for detectives to find the clues?
Yes.
You're kind of doing that, trying to will a Nico Benz pole into existence. But for some reason, I can't shake this feeling that you might be onto something. I don't think it's to do with the car he's driving. I think it'll be down to how much practice he would have been able to put in these wet conditions. As we got Pete's Lord as well in chat saying Fassi. Another great pick, another very young, phenomenal driver who's looking to definitely, put a stamp down in that Williams esports scene, isn't he? He's certainly got the talent to do so. And another great pick, who's currently on your screens at the moment, is of course going to be Max Grosspointer.
Definitely.
Dare I say, could be in for a chance at pole here as well. A very quick driver when it comes to wet conditions.
From what I've been told, he was second in time trial at this circuit. So if he doesn't get pole, I'm very, very disappointed in him. And I will be messaging him after and trying to figure out all the worst things I can say to him. Followed by him probably saying something back to me. But we'll ignore that part. So yes, Max needs to get himself in the top 2. But I'm going to go with Nico Benz for pole. So I'm going to go Nico, Max, Ronha for the top 3. I'll go for a top 3. That's how greedy I'm going to be today for my predictions. But Max is looking strong on this opening run. But then again, we'll see if the track gets better or worse, or if it stays the same throughout the next 8 minutes of qualifying. And also, you've got to think now, our driver's going to be prepared to do multiple runs and have more fuel, or do you think they'll go one run and back in to get a new set of tyres? Or because I don't think, actually, no, you can't get more than one set of wets, can you, in qualifying? It's one set of wets only, isn't it?
Don't know. I'll have a quick double check on that one, but I can answer your question. Personally, I would definitely be putting on multiple laps of fuel just to make sure I can get myself in a rhythm, because as it stands at the moment, throughout the rest of this qualifying session, the rain will only get harder.
Oh, harder than it already is.
Harder than it already is.
Well, the first time comes through. A 43.4 to set up the session by Max, and then I got beaten by nearly a 6/10 of a second by Reese Linton. Alvaro Carreton beats that by another 2/10 of a second with a 42.607. We got Nando Moreira going through. He goes into fourth with a 43.6. We've got the two RHGs coming through. First will be Valentin Tar. Where can he go on the board? Goes up into P5 with a 44.1. We've got Barry Burman coming through. Ishmael Fassi goes into second for Williams to make it a Williams 1-2 provisionally. Can Barry split the two Williamses? No, he can't. He goes above them with a .404, separating them by 0.2 of a second. Now, one driver still to keep our eyes on, Thomas Ronhaar. He's on a lap now. He invalidated his first lap, but if he's on a second lap now, he should have better tyres because they've warmed up a bit more.
Yeah, obviously, you do more laps on these wet tyres, but it can be a bit tricky to warm up in these conditions.
That big
But
slide.
again, a big slide cost him invalidated lap time. But as you was mentioning, the more laps you do on these wet tyres, the more temp you can get into them. Not only that as well, these wet tyres are tremendous pieces of equipment. The tyres don't always get the praise they deserve in Formula 1, and the Pirelli wet tyres are a prime example of it. The reason why drivers don't necessarily like to use them as much is because they have that they've just got less tread. They've got bigger grooves, less tread. But the bigger the grooves, the more water they shift. You know, these cars are looking at shifting maybe 30 to probably about 45 litres per lap of water off of the surface of this track.
Yeah. So
But you
currently,
take that, like, it's absolutely mental.
indeed, and I saw Barry was actually down on his time by a 10th, but was purple in that middle sector. So I'm not sure if he made an improvement there. But so far, is Barry on pole by just over 0.2 of a second to Alvaro Carson ahead of Ishmael Fassi, Reece Linton and Nelson Alves in the top 5. Brilliant, of course, for TES to have a car at the moment in that top 5 or fighting for that top 5 position. But then again, the gaps are quite large. A second separates Max and Barry, and it's nearly 2 seconds, which separates Barry and Valentin down in P8. Valentin was on a lap, but he did let off along it. And I don't believe Nico actually went for much of a trial. I think he went on his lap and backed off quite early and went back into the pits and hasn't been out since. So that makes me think, why has he left it so long? Because if the track's going to be getting worse, was he not out there pumping laps in?
I think what he might have been hoping for is that a lot of these drivers would have put more fuel on to do numerous amount of laps. So while they're constantly getting rid of that water on the racing line, he would be able to creep out on track, find himself in a good position.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, that's not the way it's gone. Everyone's fueled up for one lap. Everyone's gone and done their mandatory lap, and they've dived it back into the pits. So now this gives Nico Benz a very awkward position. Yes, he is alone on track. Normally we'd be praising this. He's got loads of clean air. He's got no distractions. Might be a marvel, an absolute genius. But in this case, there's no cars in front of him to displace the water.
No.
The rain's coming down heavier. It's layering itself on the track at this point. The grease is getting pulled up out of the tarmac because the water is raising it up a little bit. It's less dense. It's going through the oil, and the oil is being risen up to the surface. And when you don't have the cars which are constantly out on track, you know, pushing that water out of the way, making sure you do have a little bit of dry tarmac underneath for the tyres to touch, it can cause issues, and it could cause a couple slides here and there for Nico Benz. But I'm sure he's a very wise head on young shoulders, as we've mentioned. He could potentially be looking to go for maybe 2 out laps here, and then find himself towards the back of the train with the cars coming out the field at the moment.
Of course, so we've got 4 minutes left in this qualifying session before we head over towards the race, and that is when we'll also see who takes pole position. At the moment, it could be anyone because the gaps are that big. People have made little bits of mistakes here and there. They might not have pushed as hard. They might have not had the correct brake bias and diff and stuff. They could be doing a bit of testing. So this still throws this Q3 up in the air for these final runs. They've got 3 minutes and 40 seconds to go, so they've got time to do 1, maybe 2 runs if they can make it a little bit quicker. But I'm not quite sure. Oh, Valentin's binned it at the exit of turn 5. Oh, and that is a big shame. He didn't have a representative time compared to the top, so we knew he had big improvements, but it looks like he's binned it.
Yeah, and
on track.
Dare I say, this is the heaviest the rain has been all session, and it's looking to reach its pinnacle here. And it'll slowly start dying down after the end of this qualifying session. It's a huge shame for Valentin there. I'm sure that's not the way he would have wanted this qualifying session to go in the slightest. It was looking really good for RHG, getting both drivers into Q3. Valentin showing that form that we know he has. He's been really struggling to try and find it, try and bring it out in this year's game. We know he's a fantastic driver who's able to find those couple tenths of a second when it matters most. And unfortunately, it just seems like he's lost it over the curb going through turn 7 there, doesn't it?
Indeed, that is a big shame indeed for he said Nico Benz, for Valentin Tarvard, but we have got Nico Benz on a lap time now, heading down in towards his first set through, in towards turns 4 and turns 5, where we lost, unfortunately, Valentin Tarvard a few seconds ago, and we can see it's purple's first sector so far for Nico, on my screens at least, so we'll see what he can do in these next 2 sectors. Can he get himself onto pole position? He's been looking strong in Q1 and Q2, but these are far different conditions to what we saw back then in that middle sector. He heads down towards turns 8 and turns 9, goes a little bit deep, but these laps will be far from perfect in these wet conditions. Hops that curb on the exit as he heads down now in towards turn 11, Josh. His third sector is going to be treacherous in these conditions.
Absolutely. You know, normally you'd be able to sort of pick your own line, find your way around the corners, whichever way you want. But here, at this point, with so many different drivers taking different lines, you know, the entirety of the inside of his corner is going to be covered in grease. The entire of the exit's going to be really hard to apply the traction down. And the car's going to naturally want to rotate its rear back out while you start applying the throttle. So they're going to have to be so delicate, so patient on the throttle, as Nico Benz does absolutely beautifully there, trying to minimize the amount of wheel spin he's getting so we can get that car getting pushed forward, get him a nose planted down, get him a rear planted down, so we can try and find any form of traction whatsoever. And he's done a fantastic job handling that final sector. But will it be good enough to find himself jumping up the positions here for his final run of the session? Nico Benz is going to come across the line and put himself P3.
But there's so many laps to go under. He could also go on to another lap himself, I think. And we can see as well, Matt's cross pointer up by 8 tenths on his lap. He could also be looking to get himself towards the top of the timings. He comes up towards line 4, the Veloce Academy team, and he goes into P4 there with a .712. Then we got, I believe, Reese Linton heading across the line. Where can he go? Goes up into pole position with a .42.320. Brilliant lap time there from Reese. What can Ron Haar do? He's a driver to be keeping our eyes on. Can he try and challenge for pole? What a lap! 5 tenths of a second separates P1 and P2. Ron Haar to Linton, a 41.812.
I think he might have just said, I want pole position now. I'm going to do a lap.
Well,
what a lap from Thomas Ron Haar. I'm speechless.
That is absolutely brilliant. 5 tenths of a second separates P1 and P2. We've got Barry on a lap. We can still have many others on laps, I believe. I think Nico Benz has let off. Yes, he's not on a lap. He's dipped down. So I don't think he will be able to make any more improvements from that P5. But that is a superb lap there from Thomas Ron Haar. I don't know if anyone can really challenge that. Barry's up by only a tenth and a half. That would put him just ahead of Reese Linton at this point. Still, it would still put him 4 tenths back off of the RXG driver. So we'll see now what Barry can do. Comes through in towards the last few corners now, up in towards the hill at turns 12, in towards turn 13 at the left-hander. I don't think anyone else here. He's on a push lap.
We've got Barry, we've got both of the Williams drivers, and we do have Nando Moreira still going for it here. So there is a little bit of potential for these drivers to find a little bit more time. Nico Benz retiring from the session here, so we're going to keep our eye on Barry Burman as he's heading through his final sector. Is he going to be able to sort of raise a challenge to Thomas Ron Haar's lap time? It's going to be a very tall order if he's going to be able to do it. He does as well.
That third
Only
sector.
a tenth. That is absolutely brilliant stuff from Barry Burman. And now you've got to think as well, with the drivers still coming through, we do have the 2 Williams cars. We do still have Nando Moreira. Nando Moreira is going to be the first car to come up to the line here. He's delicately feathering the throttle through this third sector, making sure he's minimizing the wheel spin before he absolutely chucks it back down on the power, heading down the straight, going through the puddles, getting the tyres a little bit wet. Where's he going to be able to put the car? And it's only P8 for the F7R driver. We've got Alvaro Caraton coming up now towards the line. Ishmael Fassi jumps up into P3. Where's Caraton going to be able to put it for the Williams?
Oh.
He remains P5.
Those lap times there, you look at the gap between Ron Haar and Barry, that's still over, that's still pretty much a tenth and a half. So superb from the both of them. Also, Fassi being about a tenth back from Barry Burman, and then you can see that gap there to Reese Linton, nearly 3 tenths of a second between third and fourth. The top 3 are just unrivaled here at this point in qualifying, and we can see, unfortunately, Nelson Alvarez will be 9th here in qualifying down at the bottom. But Nico Benz, good performance in P6 Max as well. In P7, good grid for them for this race. We can see, though, it's Thomas Ron Haar on pole by a tenth and a half, nearly, to Barry Burman, ahead of Ishmael Fassi in third, Reese Linton in P4, Alvaro Caraton rounded out the top 5. Then we had Nico Benz, Max Grosspointner, Nando Moreira, Nelson Alvarez, and Valentin Tarvard rounded out the top 10 on this grid. And you can just look at the gaps, Josh. They are they're rather large between the grids, which just shows how strong those at the top are.
Yeah, not only does it show the strength of the guys at the top, it really shows the unpredictable nature of when weather gets involved in this year's game. It can really cause some sort of disruption to the drivers, of course, as well. We've got a couple of mentions in chat. Perhaps it was a different setup. Perhaps Ron Hart anticipated the wet weather and went for a wet setup. Potentially, but yet again, he was very, very quick in Q1 as well. So maybe he's gone for sort of a mix of the two. Maybe he's gone for that intermediate level setup where it's got the straight line speed to make sure it's able to overtake him and dry. But when it ends up getting towards the wet parts of a track and that part of the qualifying session, he's still able to find a little bit of lap time where other drivers wouldn't be able to. It's interesting. It's something I would love to be able to ask in an interview afterwards. But again, that it depends if he finishes on the podium.
It does indeed, and well, I'm sure he'll be able to, but we'll have to see. And we can see the track's dry, but this isn't the session we will be running in. We'll be running, of course, in the new session, which obviously will be setting up for us very, very shortly. And I'm going to have to try and leave the session now, which I can do, luckily, and get ourselves into the new one. So while we sort all that out, we'll be having a quick words from our sponsors over at GT Omega and Sim Racing Centre. Right, and we're back now. Get ready for the French Grand Prix. It's going to be pole for Thomas Ronard ahead of Barry Burman. Two of the quickest drivers on this game going to be battling around the Paul Ricard circuit. Josh, and I can see you're happy. Is that a rain dance I can see?
It is a rain dance, but this time it's not to bring the rain, it's to send it away. I've had enough of the wet around Paul Ricard at this point. Although it would create some very entertaining racing, I want to see some DRS overtakes. I want to see the drivers tactically use it and sort of challenge each other in, this realm of chess combat we see, the tactical fighting era where they're deploying the battery instead of necessarily opening the DRS and where they're closing the DRS early before they even head onto the brakes. I've noticed a couple of drivers start to adopt that into their race pedigree. I saw it Wednesday in the F1. I saw it Thursday, yesterday, in the F2 stream that you were running and in the F3 stream I was running, where they would deliberately close the DRS to make sure they didn't get the overspeed approaching into a braking zone so they could kind of harvest that little bit more energy by having a longer braking zone. It's something I want to see from these drivers. It's something all of them know. It's going to be a technique all of them will want to use. But finding the right opportunity to do so could be very difficult if it is wet because they can't open the DRS. So,
of course.
Dare I say, potential for maybe everyone in chat to do a little rain dance to try and hope it's going to be dry. Would it be a sun dance at that point?
Yes, but what would the sun dance be? A more groovy version of the rain dance.
Yes, exactly. You just got to put your shoulders into it. There you go.
Yeah, I'm not going to be dancing. The thing is, right. I know a lot of people, so that will take the mic, and we'll get that as a GIF, and we'll make that as a video. Like they do to Mr. Will Gibson. So I'm not going to take that risk of dancing on stream. I've sung on stream. That got put into PSGL's general chat. I still have that people mention that to my day, to this day. So no, I'm not going to look a fool anymore.
I've got one of me blowing a kiss saying goodnight to people. It's fine.
And
you can have a look for that one.
Don't you also have one of you playing football in an elf suit in the rain?
Yes. I do. That is content out there. It was for charity though. I don't just dress up as an elf. I'm tall enough to dress up as an elf, but I don't. It's not exactly what I was looking for. But certainly, some of these drivers who are going to be looking at potentially getting a very early present from Santa, and I do mean a very early present. We're looking 10 months in front here. Are going to be SRC drivers. Not having the best qualifying result. Struggling a little bit in the pace department on that front.
Yeah.
they're going to need a bit of a miracle. They're going to need a gift in this
They are.
race to be able to jump back up and to be able to score a handful of points to keep themselves so far in the championship battle, with the likes of F7R not having the greatest qualifying as well, but with Williams once again being consistent, having that great mentality of just being there. Don't need to come out. They don't need to put the lap times in, that the Thomas Ronhaars, that the Barry Burmans have done. But just find themselves in that little pocket where they're able to score a brilliant handful of points every single week. We could potentially see them jumping up to the top of the standings from that sort of, you know, viewpoint that they've got, that ideological process of just being there, showing up to the races, constantly getting those P3s, P5s. It's worked for them.
It has,
It really
indeed.
has.
And I think the likes of SRC and S7R, the good thing they know is there's points for every position. If you're P20, you can get a point. If you're P1, you get 35. So there's still points to score. It's just there's going to be a lot less for your team if you finish further down. So SRC, they need to work their way up the grid. They can do it. You know, they've got Louis Welch and Harry. Harry I don't see too often, but Louis I've seen him for multiple years here on this game. He can wiggle himself out of a situation if he needs to. So I'm expecting to see him try and charge his way up and maybe get himself in towards that top 10. But teams like Williams, teams like Ferrari need to start to kind of make an advantage of this, make an advantage of a poor performance from, you know, F7R and SRC to try and jump themselves up into first. If you look at Williams, there's a 7-point gap to SRC. There's a 17-point gap to S7R. They can easily close that in with a victory, or with a, you know, maybe a P3 and a P4, or even a P5 and a P6. So all they got to think about now is just beating S7R and SRC. They've got Red Clutch behind, but they didn't have the best qualifying, especially for Joris Krozen, but Reese still was up within that top 4. He still got a chance, but the wet weather pace wasn't quite there for him. Oh, Josh.
Bless me. Hello, pardon me there.
I looked over, I saw the camera move.
Oh, yeah, no, it's a beautiful feature. I can lean and it follows me. So when I do try and get off camera for a sneeze, unfortunately, you guys are still going to get that. Where's my hand? My hand sanitizer's over there. I'll get it once we change camera shot. But what I will say, I'm seeing a couple of you like asking for when the race is going to be restarting. It is mandatory in E-Series here that we do have a lobby restart, even if there are no time penalties given. It's just to create that level of equality, so when we do put it on dynamic, it won't get any of that fed information from the qualifying session like it loves to do. We know how the F1 23 game works. It works in mysterious ways. It loves to create a couple scenarios in its own head before we've even given it the yes. So we are currently waiting for all the drivers to get back in the lobby. As I say that, all of them are in. We're sorting out the grid as we speak. But as soon as we're able to get that going, we'll be able to chuck it over and we'll get a beautiful shot of a pit lane. And we can look at some of the character models.
Of course. And, well, while we wait, so we've still got a little bit of time, let's have a little look at the calendar, because this calendar is quite spectacular. Obviously, we're here for round 4 in France. Next week, we'll head off to Austria, which will also be just an event of carnage. Then we have our break week, of course, on March 8th. But we come back, we have Britain, followed by Imola, followed by Qatar. 3 completely different circuits, one after each other. That's going to create quite a mix, I think, with the different teams.
Yeah, I'm very interested to sort of see what sort of lineups the teams are going to go for as well, because, you know, we've got the likes of Dylan Warren and Emma Ferrari, who seems to find himself at peace, being put through, you know, very strenuous circuits, which a lot of other drivers aren't necessarily huge fans of. But again, it's certainly going to be something I want to keep an eye out for, how they approach each week. I mean, we got Paul Ricard after last week, and of course Spa before Spain. They've been very traditional racetracks. They've been very open, very flowing. Heading to Austria, it's another one of those. Slightly less traditional because of how short it is, but again, it's got the same sort of characteristics that Paul Ricard has, that Catalunya has, that Spa has.
Yeah.
Then after having that week break, they get a chance to recharge their batteries, refresh. They're going into yet another traditional track, followed by more of a old style traditional track, but it's still traditional. And then they get chucked to Qatar, which again isn't traditional. It's one of those really, really quick circuits where they're going to really struggle to charge up their battery because of the lack of braking points. And then heading over to Mexico, more of a traditional circuit. Then Las Vegas. Do I need to say anything about Las Vegas being traditional? Only tradition it's got there is that they don't actually know how to put drains in the floor. And then finishing it off with dare I say, one of the most iconic circuits in the world, especially in the Formula One scene of Interlagos. But David Richards, I do believe we currently have all the drivers loading into the session.
We do. And you can see on our screens, we've got the race being loaded into now, just waiting for one more driver to get themselves loaded in, being Ishmael Fassi. Then once he's in, we can get started. Obviously, the drivers will spend the first 30 seconds getting themselves sorted, getting everything they need to, the setups, their engineer, having chats with their engineers, all of that malarkey. But Josh,
Yes.
it's overcast now. The weatherman's back. Anything to tell us?
Get streamlined. I see that in the YouTube chat. Right. Let's give it a cheeky little update here. Right. My finger's out the window.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to sense something.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sensing much.
Oh, okay. That's nice then for the drivers.
I'm not sensing too much.
Oh, okay. We'll see what happens then. It's overcast at the moment, but we'll get started very shortly.
I can feel a little bit of heat in 2 minutes' time.
Yeah,
but I can't tell. I can't tell if that's the hand sanitizer I've put on going into a cut, or whether that's the sun. We'll wait and see. We'll wait and see on that one.
The first couple of laps, but obviously this start will be quite interesting because the tyres, I don't really know. Normally have an idea of what tyres the drivers go with, but here the strategy is all in the air. I don't know how long a soft tyre lasts. I don't know how long a hard tyre lasts. So if anyone tells us in the chat, that'd be nice to know. But I can't see them telling us too much, as I don't want to leak the strategies or the possible strategies that the different teams could take. But going into this, it could be quite a scene indeed. And Ben says it's forwards at the end, maybe. But if it's not, then you are the worst weatherman in existence. But Josh, I can already see it looking to lighten up.
Just a little bit.
But
a smidge. A slight amount.
Yes, indeed. And hopefully we can get started more soon because we're having a bit of a long hold here.
I just want to go. It's Paul Ricard. I love this circuit. I love the racing. I love these drivers. They've been so competitive so far through the first 3 rounds. I'm just being teased at this point. I'm fairly confident all of us sitting on the setup screen still. Put us in, please.
And yes, the long wait where we don't really have much to talk about apart from just hurry up, drivers, and get started. As you know, the NASCAR says, drivers, start your engines. Please do that now.
We can ask chat how their day's been. I mean, it's Friday. It's the end of the week. We've got the weekend looking forward to. The end of F1 testing as well.
And, well, we're underway. We have 2, 3,
4,
4, and 5 votes here for the French Grand Prix. Ron Hall on pole ahead of Barry Bromans in second, and they head down towards turn 1. Brilliant start from the top. 2 minutes, bit of game saying would be nice, of course. Indeed, time-wise, all hard apart from a soft and a medium on the circuit. They head into turn 1, and Ishmael Fassi looking to get a move ahead of Reese Linton. Reese looking to argue there with Alvaro Carlton as they head down towards turn number 3. And Nando Moreira, Josh here, on a set of the soft tyres, looking to make things work. We've got Max Crosspointer here arguing with Nico. Ben's in towards turn 3, going the long way around. Has inside at turn 4. Bit of contact there between Nico and Max as they head down towards turn number 5. Nelson Alves looking for a bit of a slot up the inside, couldn't do so. And Joris as well with a good start ahead of Valentin Tarvard here. But Nando on the soft here, this could be a really good play from S7R, Josh.
Yeah, it could be. He just needs to find that little bit of grip on those soft tyres. They'll fire up a little bit quicker. It is quite chilly out there on track at the minute, 18 degrees. It doesn't sound that cold in comparison to the normal French winter weather, but you've got to remember, these Formula One tyres run at 100 degrees Celsius in their prime. They're looking towards that 90, 100 degree radius. Really just trying to get a little bit more heat in those tyres, and dare I say, Nando Moreira has done a fantastic job of that as he's going to be moving down the inside on Alvaro Carlton. And surely he's got to start looking forwards with more of the battles happening in front of him. But as we've got Ishmael Fassi and Reese Linton going side by side through this third sector, it's exactly what I was on about. You take the outside line, it turns it to the inside, but if a car on the outside is able to get that little bit more traction, they'll find themselves back on the inside, and it really creates these pendulum swing battles where you can see all sorts of action happen, including Nando Moreira trying to pull one around the outside here. What a move.
Brilliant
I know
move.
it's a soft compound tyre. It's a little easy to get the tyres fired up. It's a little more grippy. But still, having the trust and the faith in your drivers around you to do that sort of stuff is just remarkable. And someone else who's looking to try and make moves further down the grid is Dylan Warren, currently in P11. He's gained a position already. Valentin's fallen back a little bit. Tycho Hardy's made up a couple positions as well. So they're all going to be looking on the hunt here. Tycho Hardy on the medium compound of tyre, another interesting choice. We're going to have to keep an eye out for that as well.
Ooh, indeed, there's Dylan Warren there getting his elbows there on the back, or I should say ahead of Valentin Tarvard in towards turns number 4s and 5. That could have ended in a slight bit of contact there between the two. And Dylan's gone wide. Allows Valentin to get a decent run. Dylan's gone off circuit now. We're going to go nearly 3 wide. Tiger Hardy looking to slot himself through. Can't find a move, but now he's got that straight to do so as I head down towards turn number 8 and number 9. Tycho's stuck in behind the both of them. He goes to pull to the inside, makes it 3 wide as they head in towards the chicane. He gets ahead of Valentin. Can he get himself ahead of Dylan Warren? He goes to the outside, has to tuck back behind the back of the Ferrari as he couldn't quite get the move done. But you can see Tycho is quick on these mediums, but he's got to get the moves done now. As you can see as well, Nando Moreira getting that move ahead of Ismail Fassi to pop himself into 3rd position now. As Tycho does get the move ahead of Dylan Warren. Brilliant move there from the S7R driver. But you've got to start thinking, Josh, here. Soft for Nando, mediums for Tycho. They're going to struggle at the end as Dylan Warren has a massive tank tap and nearly ends up going round.
Yeah, I do have a little bit of information, but I don't feel like I quite want to announce it to chat yet because we do still have brilliant racing all throughout this field. But considering we're going to start heading onto a start-finish straight, I feel like I could spill it in time. It is predicted to rain at the end of this session, but light rain should be approaching in 42 minutes' time. Whether it will come or not is going to be up to whether we end up getting a safety car. And if we end up keep having accidents throughout the grid, we could potentially see a safety car come out with Harry Lay spinning there. And also picking up a penalty. It's the double whammy. I'm sure if he mentions that one to the stewards and says he was facing backwards, how could he gain time on track? He might be able to get rid of that time penalty. But again, that's up to the discrepancy of the stewards, not us. Of course, like I was saying, light rain, 42 minutes. Is that the reason why we've seen so many hard tyres? Potentially.
It could definitely be the case, and we'll see what happens. But it depends if the rain affects the race that much. We could see a little bit of fights at the end, but if it's right at the end, I can't see many people swapping onto a different set of tyres. We can see them all now heading down in towards turn number 8. We've got Tiger Hardy looking to get on the back of Nelson Alves. Can't find a move into turn 8 this time, but he's right on the back of the Mercedes TES driver as they head out the corner now, heading back down towards turn number 10 and 11, and we can see him gaining in. But yeah, we'll see what Tycho can do here. We'll see if he can make this strategy work, but it will be, of course, quite close indeed. And so he'll file through in towards turn 11 and turn 12. Tycho does make the move up the inside. A bit of a scrappy place to go for it. He nearly taps the back of the Alpine as well, but he gets the move done. Very nice move there from Tycho into the top 10.
Yeah, I was just making sure he was able to secure the move before congratulating him. But again, another very brave, very audacious move on that medium compound of time. That's exactly what he needs to do. He knows that qualifying result isn't what F7R are looking for to keep their lead in the championship. He knows he's got to make moves. So I do like the aggressive play, going for that medium tyre and really trying to push a couple of these hard runners right to the better end. Realistically, we could be looking at lap 13 for the pit stop window for the medium tyres, maybe lap 10, maybe lap 11 for the softs. These hard tyres, realistically, they could potentially go the whole distance of the race. I'm not going to lie. If we do end up getting rain on lap 23, 24, I expect to see him dive in, and depending on how heavy it is, maybe onto a set of intermediates, or maybe they might put it in on maybe a lap 19, and then decide to go for softs until the end there. So it'd be interesting, but chat, let us know what your strategy would be if you were on the hard tyre. What lap would you decide to try and pit? What tyre would you go on to? Or if you was on the softs, let's say you were Nando Moreira, you've clearly got pace on this soft compound tyre. You know you've got to make moves. If you're stuck in P3 for a little bit, though, what tyre do you go on?
Well, I'm not the chat, but I'll answer. I would go lap 14 onto a set of mediums and take them to the end. And go for a bit of an undercut. Try and get that bit of a bounce upon some of the other drivers, and then use that DRS to defend as the laps come down. But we can see moves being tried to be made here. We got, that's going to be Nando being under pressure from Ismail Fassi. Gets the move done. Does Ismail back into the top 3 for the Williams driver. We got as well Reece Linton looking to gain in here on the back of Nando. I'm starting to think, has Nando kind of hit that drop-off point, or getting close to that initial drop-off point? We know in this game, once the tyres drop off, they just go instantly down, and you lose a lot of pace instantly. So this could be the case here for Nando. As you can see, he's lost a lot of time to the back of Ismail. He's also got Reece Linton pretty much tapping the back of him as they head down towards turn number 1 as they file through. And at the moment, we can see yet again they're all pulling out of that slipstream to keep the engine nice and cool down. But along with Nando not making positions, same for Tiger Hardy. He's gaining in, but he's now kind of put himself to a halt here in the top 10.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily sure whether this is the tyre drop-off or whether it's Nando maybe just taking a back seat for a little bit, understanding that he's going to have to pace himself a little bit longer on these soft tyres to make sure they go until he's able to put a set of mediums on. And whether he's just kind of nurturing them at this point in the race. He's had a good bit of run. He's got the tyres fired up. If he just settles them back down for a little bit, he can wait for that drop-off period to happen. He's got the DRS to be able to pull himself along with the likes of Ishmael and Barry, all following in this Thomas Ronhaar train we've got at the moment. It's certainly going to be something to keep an eye on, especially if we start seeing the likes of Tycho's pace drop off as well. Perhaps it could be a little bit of tyre management from these guys rather than the tyres immediately going to that cliff face.
Indeed, because I think they know if they want to get a little bit further in this race and stay at the top, they've got to take these tyres quite a long way. They can't pit lap 10. They've got to pit a lot longer. Otherwise, at the end of the race, they will just be swamped by the rest of the field. So, yeah, they've got to work a little bit together. The cars, a bit of a tap there. That's Ishmael hitting the back of Barry as they head through and towards turn number 14. Bit of a tap now. It puts Ishmael under pressure from Reese Linton, who gets himself into P3. So what happened there between those two? Not ideal at all for Ishmael Fassi. I think he's got a bit of damage and further back. We can see Nico Benz making a send there on the back of Alvaro Caraton. Went a bit too deep. Got past, I think it was Max. And then he had to drop him back. So big showing there for Nico, of course, and for Alvaro, who's now under pressure from Max and Joris as they head into turn one. Nico's had to go to the inside. Max goes to the outside. Has to back off there. Couldn't quite get the move done. But also Joris with a decent run on the back of the McLaren as they head into turn 3. The car just all broke down on lap 6 of 27 here.
Absolutely. All of a sudden, it looks like these drivers are more than happy to try and fight for position. They're not looking to nurse these hard tyres much longer than they need to. They just want to get a bit of racing going. Nico Benz with a very dramatic lunge, trying to get that position. I'm sure he's going to be maybe regretting that as of this moment in time. But again, he's back within this DRS range, and we mention it almost every single week here in E-Series. The DRS is so powerful. You're finding 4 or 5 temps per lap because of it. You're able to pull yourself along. You're able to save that little bit of battery so that you can deploy it in the right circumstances. And something Nando Moreira has got to be very cautious of at this moment in time is he's almost fallen out of the DRS range from Ishmael Fassi. So if he lets Alvaro Caraton through and uses that as kind of a buffer while we still have Ishmael and Reese fighting here for P3, it'll give him another one of those targets where he can hold on to the back to for that little bit longer to ensure he can continue using the DRS, even if he is stretching his tyres that little bit more, and even if he does start suffering on those softs.
Indeed, and we'll see what happens to the strategies here, obviously, with those soft tyres and mediums being put into play. Obviously, Harry Lai a little bit out of this race with that penalty, of course, and also being right at the back of the train on the mediums. I can't see him really making much work, unfortunately, in this race. But Nando and Tycho, F7R, they know they're in a championship fight. They've gone for something risky, gone for a gamble, and we'll see if this can work. It could help them, but it could also fail drastically. But I'm sure they've got a lot of people behind the scenes, all the engineers working hard to figure out what the best strategy is for the team to try and push themselves forward. Tycho started 17th, he's down to the top 10. He's made some good work, he's comfortably as well, staying with that top trend train. So this could still be a really good strategy here for Tycho, but Nando was dropped back a little bit, was third earlier on. He's now down to P6, and he just needs to keep himself within that DRS range of the top 5. Otherwise, he'd be in pretty much dire straits in the next few laps. We can see further down as well, Tycho gaining in on the back of Joris. We can also see Dylan Warren looking to gain into the back of Valentin Tarvados, Joel Marquardt, and Frederick Moraviak having a bit of a battle down below, along with Louis Welch and Nick Bonventer for P16. Louis gets something done ahead of the Haas as they head through towards that chicane. Nice job there from Louis into P16, but SRC still not happy with the result they're in at the moment, because P16 and P20, that's only about 8 points, I think.
Yeah, it's not looking too grand if you consider their start to the season was off to an absolute flyer. But you do have to remember as well, normally they would have Shenanki Clay in, but he's not appeared for this round, has he? You know, no disrespect intended on the likes of Louis Welsh and Harry Lay, but Shenanki Clay is one of those drivers where you could realistically give him an opportunity, even a small one, and he'll end up running a mile with it. And he's one of those drivers who really makes the most out of whatever situation they're put in. If Louis and Harry haven't had enough time to adapt to that new environment over at SRC, perhaps they're finding it a bit of a struggle to get used to the likes of the new engineers and, you know, the sort of the way the team runs as well. Because, of course, every team runs differently. Yeah, that should go about saying. Doesn't matter what team it is. Doesn't matter if you're comparing a Williams to a Ferrari or a TF10 to an SRC. All of them do run differently. All of them have a different quirks to them as well. It's going to take a little while to adjust, and this could potentially be just one of those learning moments for the likes of Louis and Harry to be able to get themselves into a window where they feel a bit more comfortable with the team and can really start to push on from there. As we see a huge moment there for one of the Mercedes, Nelson Alves.
Yeah, it went really wide. I think he lost the car, but just went off track just to secure himself without going off and lose, and trying to lose the car completely. But he's lost 6 positions there. I believe in P11, P12. He's now dropped down to P15, fighting with Louis Welch as they heading towards the chicane. Big scary moment there for the TES team, especially for Nelson. It could have been a big disastrous moment there for the driver, but luckily he gets away with it quite unscathed. But we can see further ahead. Oh, someone having a bit of lag there for someone. It seems Tycho faced into the back of Joris, and Joris is round. Oh, big shame for Joris. He goes round but collects the car slightly, but loses 2, possibly 3 positions. We've got Vantine Tarvod up the inside of the race clutch car. Can he get himself ahead as they come through now? He gets the outside line, bit of contact between the two. But big shame for Joris there, and it seems the drivers starting to struggle with grip here.
Absolutely, and while these hard tyres seem to be going towards that cliff face, as you mentioned, coupled drivers have ended up worming their way back into contention. Look at Nando Moreira, 3 attempts. He was having a little nibble at the back of Nico Benz's car, heading through that sector 3. Those soft tyres, this is where we're going to see the pace start evening off between all the compounds. When all of them end up falling off the cliff, the pace starts to even out a little bit more. The soft and the hard, the gap isn't too much, but of course you do have to remember, it is still that soft compound of rubber. It is still very, very malleable, and of course, if it is more malleable, it will just wear away that little bit quicker than the hard compound. So perhaps Tycho Hardy might have hit the nail on the head with a strategy by calling it on the mediums, because he still has an abundance of pace left in those tyres, and they'll last a little bit longer than the car, which is only 8 tenths up the road from him.
Indeed, and we can see it again there, Louis Welch on the back of Nelson, and I think Nelson was a bit more cautious this time, going through in towards the end of that first set. We can see Max as well making a move ahead of Nando. Nando's dropped behind. Oh, he's gone off track. I think he went a little bit too deep. His teammate Tycho Hardy's gone ahead. Now, do we see some games here from Nando Moreira to try and defend from locks behind? Because he knows his tyres are a little bit dropped off, but does he defend a little bit more than he would have done to someone else? And no, Tycho lets Nando bat through. And going through with him is Joris. Bit weird there from Tycho. I don't know if there was an instance and he's let someone bat through due to it. Vernstein gets knocked off the circuit, but a bit confusing there from S7R.
Yeah, perhaps maybe they had a warning for a overtake being under a yellow flag, maybe?
Yes, no, because Nando went off track, didn't he?
Yeah. So perhaps that could have been the reason why Tycho's had to yield that position back to Joris as well, which I'm sure will be something they'll be talking about in the debrief room over at F7R, and maybe having a slight argument about. But at the end of the day, all these drivers, they're here for one thing, and that's to be able to work together as a cohesive unit to bring their team the most points possible, because of course we do have a prize pool at the end of this one as well. And certainly one of the teams which is looking to put on a stellar performance today at the home circuit will be Race Clutch, and Reese Linton is still up there in P4. He's still in a position where he can find himself battling for this win, but once again he needs a good strategy call from himself, from his engineers. He needs to understand what the other cars around him are trying to do, and so far he is running his own race to almost a perfect extent. He's found himself P4. Alvaro Carreton's not really able to apply the pressure, but he's saving enough battery where Ishmael Fassi and Barry Burremand are pushing the car a little bit more into the back of Ronhar. Ronhar, again, deploying a little bit of battery to get away, and Reese Linton's just cruising there in P4, doing exactly what he needs to do for that final stint, when he can deploy a bit more battery on these guys, when he can really try and get some moves which will mean a lot more than what they do now.
Of course, looking down to Reese's teammate, Joris in P9. He's stuck between a bit of a rock and a hard place at this current point. In P9 behind Nando. Can't really find a move, but he's also got Tycho Hardy right behind him as well. So we'll see if the FSNR can play some games to try and keep Joris behind that top 8 train. But you can see Joris has got more pace than Nando. Obviously, softs versus hards. At this point, we know the softs are probably dying off a little bit more than they were before. Hence why Joris is pretty much pushing the AlphaTauri through the corners. And can Joris send a bit of a late move? No, he sits back behind Nando for now. They head down to turn 1 and Joris is pushing the car through. Can he just go for a bit of a cheeky send into that first corner? Because he's gaining in. He's going to use some battery, but Joris has only got about, 16% of battery here in the car. That is far from ideal. We can see further ahead as well, Nico Benz under pressure from Max Grosspointner for P6 and P7. But Joris has got to start thinking about this move now, hasn't he? Because he's stuck behind the back of Nando. Give it time. Nando's going to lose DRS, and Joris goes for a bit of a dummy send there on the back of the AlphaTauri, but just can't find the move ahead.
Exactly, and you can see riding on board with Joris that Nando's red light is flashing. It has been flashing for that first sector. He's just about on that 10% range, doing exactly what he needs to do, placing his car correctly to try and hold Joris back. Perhaps he's trying to help Tycho out, just giving Tycho an opportunity to maybe make an overtake. But of course, you can't play games for too long on a grid as competitive as this, because the drivers are all so equally matched pace-wise. They will eventually find a way past him. That's exactly what Joris has done. Ended up heading up into turn 8 there, and he'll be looking to crack on with the rest of his race and try and catch back up to the back of Max Grosspointner to maybe help apply a bit more pressure to the likes of Nico Benz and Alvaro Carreton before he can really try and help out his teammate currently still sitting in P4.
Indeed, yep, doing a good job so far. He's racing in the top 4. Obviously, Ishmael, Barry, and Thomas, the top 3 ahead in this race. And you can see Ishmael getting very close to Barry on multiple occasions, but just not finding a move just yet. You know, he tapped the back of Barry, I think, a few laps ago in this corner now, as they went in towards this next part of the circuit. So we know these two come to blows in this race already. Let's hope it doesn't get more serious between the two as this race gets on. Lap 11 out of 27, beginning lap 12 shortly, and Ron Hart still looking comfortable. Got a 6/10 gap ahead of Barry now as they head back down towards turn 1. But the only thing stopping Thomas here is that slipstream and that DRS. That's what's really, harming Thomas's performance. He can't really pull away as much as much as he'd like to, because we know he's very quick. We know he's probably quicker than all this grid here at the moment, so he's just, need to bide his time a bit and wait for the things to come to him. But the good thing is, because of his pace, he can go for a bit more of a higher overcut, because he knows he's got the pace to do so. Other drivers can't afford that, because they'll lose too much time on that overcut strategy and that initial part.
Yeah, it's a luxury you have leading the pack, and necessarily finding yourself in a sort of a more safe and more secure position where you get to control the pace of these lead lot as well. If he doesn't want to deploy any battery, he doesn't have to, because at the end of the day, no driver's necessarily going to want to try and go for a move this early on in the race. Yes, we're in lap 12 out of 27, but it is still relatively early. You've got to think these drivers are looking to make it to around lap 20 on these set of tyres. So if they're halfway through the first stint, what's the point in overtaking now and giving Thomas Ronhard the benefit of DRS, give him the benefit to recharge a little bit more ERS, having the opportunity to use a little bit more in order to be able to build up a little pocket to save. It's one of those things where realistically, you kind of want to be P2, you want to be P3, so you can take it a little easier into corners. Because you do have to follow in the dirty air, the car will want to slide. You can't push it as hard, but by going that little bit easier, you could save a slight amount on the tyres and really try and play Ron Haar's bluff to try and go for an overcut by nurturing the tyres in this position as well. And so far, they're doing a fantastic job keeping the tyres in check, keeping all the batteries in check as well.
Pits.
As we're starting to see a couple of drivers dive into the pits. Yeah. Valentine in the pits as well, off that hard compound of tyre. Something tells me he wasn't the biggest fan.
That's quite early, isn't it, to get yourself off a set of the hard tyres
early.
onto a set of probably medium tyres here for this next part of the race. And Nando, obviously, off of those softs now, he'll go into probably a set of mediums to take those to the end, which he does, of course, there. So very nice there from Nando to go a bit earlier, obviously, on those softs to try and set himself up for a decent strategy. And then I start to think now, is Tyker Hardy looking at going to soft tyres from those mediums? Medium softer, because hards, you'd think he would have pitted by now. So is he going to go a little bit longer, leave it till around lap 16, lap 17, and bolt on a set of softs? We know that Nando he could push, and then he could comfortably for quite a while hold himself in that train. So he's at the play here, but Tyker Hardy possibly. I know I'm not a strategist, but I've been looking at what Nando could do, and surely Tyker could try and replicate that a bit easier with less fuel.
Yeah, potentially. Realistically, what you're saying is making sense, but you've got to realise as well, the rest of these drivers on the hard compound tyre, they're not going to dive it onto a set of mediums. If they're seeing drivers already, stay on the medium tyre for 12 laps, why can't they push it a little bit more on the hard and then save it and go on to softs at the end? That would be my predicament. And then at that point, if you're Tycho Hardy, you will have to go for an undercut. Your tyres will suffer at the end of that second stint, where all the drivers are going to be deploying a bit more ERS, pushing that little bit harder, and find themselves in a little bit more jeopardy. But of course, we do start having this second wave of pit stops here on lap 13, and it's all hard compound runners from the likes of Alvaro Caraton, who was up there fighting for P3. Nico Benz, Joris as sorry, Nico. Yep. Sorry, I didn't expect Nico Benz to go for that strategy there. I would have thought they would have tried it with Nick first down in P11, seeing how well that could have worked. But Nico responding to what the crowd's doing around him, it's not a dumb decision. If anything, it's quite a wise one, making sure that you're at least going to be around the same people you were fighting when you all dove it into the pits in the first stint. And you can start seeing here, Valentine is really trying to push for those medium tyres, isn't he? Hence why he's got that 3-second time penalty. Very unfortunate, but I'm sure he won't be the only one out of this race to pick up a penalty. I'm sure there'll still be another one here or there, but we've still got battles happening all throughout the grid. Looking at Joel and Louis there heading into turn 8 as well. They're still battling out. They're more than happy to battle out for these positions, aren't they?
Yes, of course, as we can see at the front as well. Barry Burman and Ishmael Fassi getting past Thomas Ronhart to pop themselves into P1 and P2. You start to think now, are they looking to also start to think about making a pit stop? Thomas is on the back of the two, but he didn't really fight them in towards turn 8. He kind of let them back through and thought, yeah, you want to make the move, have the position, I don't mind. So we'll see when the pit stops come through for the top three. Obviously, we can see the net lead is obviously Alvaro Carton ahead of Nico Benz, ahead of Valentin Tarbot, who's got that 3-second penalty. Big shame for him. And Barry and Ishmael both into the pit lane there to get off their sets of tyres and tyre shine. We know he's going to go a little bit longer. He's got the pace to do so. He will, along with Reece Linton. And also we can see the Matt Gray and Tiger Hardy still staying out into third now, started 16th. Good job for him, as we can see, obviously joining them in the pits, Louis Welch, Fanat Moraviak, Matt Grospointner also into the pit lane off of their sets of hards, all onto a set of mediums, and we'll see what these drivers can do here. Leo London, P4, Joel Markwood and Nick into the top 5 and 6, but they're quite far back off the top train, so they will lose time. And crucially, Tycho and Leo have lost DRS.
Yeah, you got to consider at this point, if you're Tycho, you have to burn a bit more battery to try and close back up to the DRS. But at this point, Reece Linton and Thomas Ronhaar, they're surely going to be thinking about working together to continue building up a potential overcut here, which is exactly what they're going to do. As you see Reece Linton deploy a bit more battery to fly past Thomas Ronhaar, with Ronhaar putting up no defence whatsoever, understanding they've got to work together now to be able to drag themselves out and sort of protect themselves from the undercut that all the other drivers are trying to do. They're going for the overcut at this point. They might even potentially be going for that soft compound tyre towards the end of this race. But in order to do that, they're going to have to work together, use that DRS, save those 5 tenths, 6 tenths a lap you can get by following another car in the DRS, to try to alleviate the overall punishment that they're going to end up suffering because of the undercut.
Indeed, but it's a hard one, isn't it, with strategy? You know, the undercut or the overcut, they've both got pros and cons. So I think really, you know, unless it's specific tracks and specific scenarios, it's more generally down to just driver performance. As we can see, Reece Linton out into the pits. Ronhaar stays out once again to take these tyres 15 laps on the hards. You've got to be thinking, is he thinking about softs now? He's gone that long. Surely he'd be looking at, you know, possibly going to a set of softs if he can go a little bit longer. Tiger Hardy, Leo Lund also stay out a little bit longer. Joe Marquardt and Nick join Reece Linton into the pit lane. They'll go onto a set of medium tyres as well to take those to the end of this Grand Prix. Obviously, yes, again, the weather's something to factor in, but if the rain comes in around lap 23 onwards, I can't see them pitting. I don't think it'd be worth it, unless it literally goes treacherous within, you know, 30 seconds. We can see Nico Benz to the top of the timings there with I think it was a 1:31, so he's looking a little bit stronger now, obviously on that race pace on the medium, sorry. He could be looking to trade victory here.
Yeah, looking at where some of the drivers came out who pitted last lap, you got Barry Burman down in P9, Ishmael Fassi P10, and then you've got all the way back in P13, Max Grospointner. Of course, we've got 4 drivers which still haven't pitted this race, but you've got to say it's looking very good for the young gun up. In the provisional lead of this race so far, Nico Benz, he's got a little bit of a buffer to Alvaro Carton. It's going to be very, very tough for him to break it. And of course, you do have the likes of Barry Burman coming through on fresh tyres, Ishmael Fassi as well. And, you know, yeah, we're still going to be waiting for Thomas Ronhaar to dive it into the pits. Will it be this lap, or is he going to fully try and commit to going to this soft compound tyre? Personally, at this point, I think he's got to commit to the soft. He's done a little bit too much. He'd be coming out around where Reece Linton was, where he'd be fighting with Tony Richet towards, you know, the lower half of the top 10, and he's diving into the pits now. But the real key question is, Nathan, what tyre is he going to go on to?
Maybe mediums if he's gone in this lap. I think it'd be a little bit early for soft, so we'll see what he does. So we'll see what strategy Thomas chooses. I'm sure it will be medium. So on to the RHG Sabre car. Well, we'll see when he changes tyres. We can see it will be a set of medium tyres for Ronhaar. Tiger Hardy, what does he go to? A set of soft. So Tiger go for that different strategy here. Medium soft, I called it at the start. And if he wins it, that is down to me and solely down to me. So we'll see what Tiger can do here. He'll drop down to around P15, maybe P16. Louis Welch, where's he about on track? No, they will get just about ahead there for Tiger Hardy of Louis Welch. So we'll see what Tiger can do now. Is Nico Benz still fighting with Alvaro Carton as they head through in towards turn number 4 and number 5? And Harry Light still staying out here. What's the plan for him, do you think, Josh, now?
There's a reason I'm a commentator, Nathan. I'm not an engineer. It's because I have absolutely no idea what Harry's trying to do. Presumably go on to that soft compound tyre, and it wouldn't surprise me if he ends up diving into the pits this lap. But something I do want to keep an eye out and just point it out to you guys. If you see Barry Burman going on an absolute charge here.
Oh, what happened?
Okay.
Someone lagged?
Okay. I'm not sure.
Nico Benz, yeah.
I do believe Nico Benz has been put down the order a little bit there. I'm not sure whether he necessarily got swiped off the track. That could be something that I might have to look at. But, you know, on my screen, all of a sudden he was there and then he magically disappeared. But someone who's not disappearing from your screens anytime soon is Barry Burman on that fresher set of medium tyre. looking to carve his way through the field. He's done a fantastic job so far on Nico Benz, on Ishmael, on Valentine, as we've still got Ishmael and Valentine battling throughout this entire third sector. Ishmael now getting the inside. Surely Valentine's going to have to back out here and try and collect himself up to go for it another time. But if he ends up waiting a little bit too long, he's got the likes of Nico Benz in the Haas car, obviously racing for MVR, trying to push him through the corner. This race is just as compact as it was at the start of the first lap.
Indeed, and we can see moves looking to be made. Max Gross putting an air defending from Joris as I heading towards turn 1, and we can see as well Harry Light dropping down the field, down to P4 now. Oh, when his goal was collision there between Harry and Valentine Toivard, and there was only wing damage there for the RHG. I think he's got a bit of damage. He has, yes, his front left, and also someone else shooting off track as well. It seemed for a second. Nico Benz off the circuit, gets a 5-second penalty. Now, what happened there? I saw Harry, and then all of a sudden I saw 3 cars flying off in the distance.
Yeah, well, I could report on the damage on Nico Benz. He's lost his front right end plate, and then, of course, as you mentioned on Valentine, the front left end plate has gone there as well. Very unfortunate to be caught up in an instant. Their races were going so well, and you know, it's really going to be a more of, you know, what can happen in the future. No VSC, no safety car, so they're all still good to go racing still. But someone who's definitely gained a little bit out of this is going to be Thomas Ronhaar, as he is looking to try and put it down the inside of Joris. Is he going to be able to do the race clutch double heading into Sector 2 here around Paul Ricard? It'll certainly be something to write home about if he's able to do it. But once again, we're seeing the race clutch drivers working well as an organised unit. Reese Linton just boxing Ronhaar and not making it easy for him to overtake. Forcing Ronhaar to go the long way around both of them, and Joris there almost had yet another nibble at the inside of the Sauber car, but he's had to back out here as Ronhaar claims P8, and he's going to be looking for P7 next. Reese Linton is going to be next on his hit list.
Indeed there, very nice move, of course, from Thomas Ronhaar. We got Nico and Tyvard into the pit lane, and I think Valentine definitely not happy at all. Gets a 5-second penalty as well to go along with that damage. Big shame for the RHG team. They was looking strong, along with, of course, NVR for Nico, and all that falls away for them. So big shame for those two, of course, with Harry Lyswell, who also, I believe, got caught up with that incident somewhere as well on the circuit. So a big shame, but they've still got work to do. There's still laps left to go, 8 laps left in this race for them to try and recover something here tonight. What we can see as well, Ishmael Fassi on the back still of Barry Burman, and further behind we've got a train being led by Nando Moreira. It'll be Max following behind along with Reese, Thomas and Joris. We could see many moves being made. Barry takes the lead. Alvaro down to P3. Ishmael takes second. We can see Max ahead now of Nando. Reese ahead of Nando. Thomas ahead of Nando there. So big shame for Moreira to drop down so many positions, but his tyres are way older than all those who've just passed him. So it's kind of expected, isn't it here, Josh?
Yeah, it's one of the gambles you take when you go for a slightly different strategy. Yes, it could make you, get track position. You could find yourself in a brilliant position at the start of the initial stint, but again, you end up pitting too early. It gets to this point of a race where you could clearly see the car is suffering, the tyres aren't looking in a great position, and dare I say, the next couple of drivers which we could be looking at to have that problem would be the likes of Joris, who's currently behind Nando. But looking further forward, we've got Dylan Moran and Alvaro Caraton both on 5-lap-old medium tyres. There's a potential for them to start feeling a little bit more graining in the coming laps as well, which would open the door for the likes of Max Grosspointer, Reese Linton and Thomas Ronhaar to make moves. Looking forward to try and claim themselves back up into those podium positions.
Of course, there's many different things that can happen here tonight for all those on the different strategies. Tygo Hardy down in P11 so far, under pressure from Nelson Alves in towards turn 1. So we'll see what Tygo can do here. Can he try and make some more moves? He's in P11, started P16. So either way, if he can get himself any higher than 16th, he's made an improvement. That's the thing people seem to forget. If you finish higher than the position you qualified, you've done a good job. So
yes,
it's nice to see Tyco now in towards, around that top 10 range. He's got the best soft tyres at the moment, so he will be looking to make moves, but he's got to make them now. We can see further ahead, Thomas Ronhaar looking to close in on the back of Reese. Linton can't gain into turn 8, as you can see Reese pulling himself along onto the back of Max Gross, putting Joris Krozen ahead of Nando into the break, so along with, I think that was Tony Roche or under pressure there from Tycho Hardy. So Tycho, Josh, could be on for a decent top 10 finish here tonight now.
Absolutely. He's looking like he is hungry for that top 10 finish, doesn't it? Didn't have the best qualifying, but certainly something he's looking to make up for in this race as he makes the move down the inside of Tony Rocheva. But again, we've got to mention that soft compound tyre. Did he call it in a little bit too early? Are the softs going to be able to really last for the full 10 laps at a good race pace without him suffering too much? Lighter fuel load than we saw at the start of the stint, but how much is that going to equate to saving tyre percentage and saving that tyre life for when it's needed the most in the last lap of this Grand Prix?
It's gonna be close one, isn't it, here for Tycho? But
yes.
he's gonna fight it, and I think he's gonna do a brilliant job either way. We can see Leo Lund also making a move there ahead of Nelson Alves, and TES started strong, but it seems that in the race have yes again started to drop back, and it seems that race pace is a thing they seem to struggle with, as we can see. Tiger Hardy there being let through by his teammate Nando as they head through in towards turns number 1 and 2. So, you know, F7R still could be on for a top 10 for both their drivers. I don't think it's that likely for Nando because of his tyre, you know, because of his tyre age. But we can see further back, that's Thomas Ronhard looking for a lunge there with Reese Linton. Bit of contact, and Thomas does get the move ahead. And Thomas, you can see now, Josh, really sticking his elbows out. Once those moves, he's looking to push on now for the next 6 laps of this race. And the rain doesn't look like it's really near at all, does it?
No, it's looking like 12 minutes away, according to the current wind speed. So we could potentially see this race finishing on dry, which would certainly potentially put a bit of a dampener on maybe a very, very, a very dramatic end to this race. If it did turn wet and none of them wanted to pit, it would certainly throw up a couple spanners in the works. But Thomas Ronhard there, he's made critical moves. That move on Reese Linton, but, you know, the rest of the cars in front of him will be on older tyres. It should only be able to get easier from here, depending on how much all these drivers necessarily want to defend from him. But if I was one of those drivers, such as Max Grosspoint has done just that, let Thomas Ronhard through, don't fight him, use him for the drivers ahead, the Ferraris, the Williams, who are going to want to defend from him.
Of course, you can see that
they're going to want more points, right? You can just try and follow Ronhard through. That would be the optimal strategy in my position.
Yeah, and the grip he's got is brilliant on those sides. You could see coming out that final corner, he was already pulling up to Dylan Ron on the exit. You know, we just push him through turn 1 now. He can carry so much more maximum speed than likes of Dylan and all those ahead. His tyres are way better. So Thomas, I think, is definitely a candidate for victory here tonight. Obviously, the last laps, anything can happen. We've got Barry, Ishmael, Alvaro, Dylan. They're all big defenders. We know they like to defend, and they're a very good job at it. So Thomas could have a bit of a, struggle trying to get through on some of these drivers here. You can see now he's going to press on the throttle, use some battery if he can to try and now think about making a move ahead of Dylan Warren. He's got that DRS to use. Dylan's also got DRS. He's getting in, using a bit of battery there. Does he pull to the inside to make a send? No, he just backs off. Goes for a bit of a dummy on the back of the Ferrari, but not key to make moves. But the key thing is here for Williams, 2nd and 3rd. That would, I think, here put them maybe top of the championship.
You'd surely think so after the performance we've shown here today. It's been absolutely fantastic. And Thomas Ronhard puts that Sauber car on the inside of a Ferrari. And now Dylan Warren's been forced to the outside of Alvaro Carreton. But of course, Carreton is going to be struggling that little bit more on the tyres, especially in comparison to Ronhard, who's still in the hunt for this as well. Going to be taking a wide line, looking to call it back to the apex as soon as possible to get the car straightened up, to get the best traction possible. And he could potentially see himself dancing around the outside of Dylan Warren here. He's just got to be very careful applying the throttle and then, of course, picking his braking point for this final corner. And he's placed that car beautifully on the apex, leaving Dylan not enough space to necessarily get that car turned in to hit the apex. Brilliant overtake there from Thomas Ronhard. Very well picked. But Dylan Warren, of course, he's going to be able to get the better run here. And you might just see him make a brilliant move around the outside of turn 1. But again, it'll come back to Thomas Ronhard coming out the exit of turn 2. He's got the better run here. He's going to be looking to try and put a bit more pressure on Dylan Warren. But of course, while all this fighting's going on, you've got to think, we've had Ishmael Fassi take the lead of this race. Perhaps we could see him sort of hold up Barry, get Alvaro involved a little bit more, and potentially try and get an overtake there as we've got an instant further towards the back of the grid. Is that Nick?
I'm not sure what happened there, but I was on board there with Reese and Max, and they had a bit of a squabble coming through out of turn 5 up towards turn 6, of course, and it's lost on that much time. Toga Hardy's within a 10th of Max. Does he go for a send? No, he can't. But all that battling has brought Togo back in it. His gap to Max earlier on was 1.5 seconds. It's now 2/10. Thomas, Dylan, all having an argument has really helped those guys behind get that advantage back to being, within a second. But Dylan Warren, we said it before, he can defend hard, and he's doing a good job at it so far to keep Ron hard behind. And now I think Thomas knows he needs to get the move more done, and ever he goes for a send, goes 3 wide, makes a bit of contact there with Warren, gets 2 moves done into one corner. That will probably go to the steward room there. Bit of a argy-bargy there from Ron Hard, gets ahead of Carlton and Dylan Warren. We can also see Reese Linton there making a move ahead of Dylan Warren as well to pop himself into P5. Brilliant move there from Reese, of course, obviously looking to take advantage of situations. And the question is, does Dylan have damage? Because we've got Max and Tarko looking to follow through on the back of the Ferrari here. Dylan's race is going from good to bad to possibly worse here.
Absolutely. There's no visible damage on that car, but I'll do everything I can to see if if he's picked up any of the invisible damage, which this game can show sometimes on telemetry data. I'll have a little look, but so far it's been certainly a masterclass strategy from Thomas Ronhard to find himself in this battle.
Yep.
But also Tycho Hardy cannot go unmentioned. He's still fighting Max Grosspointer as well. But you've got to think on that soft compound tyre, if he's just able to eke him out for a couple more laps, for a lap 24 out of 27, he could certainly find himself towards the front end of his field, with Dylan Moran struggling so much as he is at the moment.
Of course, we can see that Nando Moreira being defended there by the two Veloce Academies ahead, looking to work together to stop Nando from splitting the two as they head in towards turn 8 and 9, but that will not phase the F7 Aurora. Gets him done ahead of Max and back into the top 10 for Nando Moreira. Now, we could still see a double top 10 finish for S7R, considering it was looking quite unlikely, being as how far back that's, Tycho Hardy was from the train. Was P16 after qualifying, now in P7 comfortably on the back of the guys. As we can see, more moves being made. Reece Linton looking to get himself ahead of Alvaro Caraton. Can't find a move at all here at the moment. Looking to try and find it, but just can't quite get close enough to the back of the Williams. Further ahead, we can see Thomas Ronhart on the back of Barry. Ishmael on the back of Barry and Ishmael. This could still be a brilliant battle between the three. But you are right, Josh. The track is getting more overcast. It is getting more darker, so I don't think we'll see much rain. But if a droplet comes here and there, it could make it a little bit more struggle for the drivers. We can see further back as well. Has Max got damage here? Because look how far back he's dropped. He's dropped 2 seconds. He's also got Turner O'Shea on the back and gets ahead. Nando as well in the battle. They must have come to contact.
Just having a little look. I'm trying to find anything I can about what might have happened to Max and why he seems to be struggling so much. But certainly he's definitely not had the end of this race as he has at the start. He had a brilliant first stint, didn't he, on the hard compound tyre, and it does just look like his pace has disappeared, so perhaps handling a little bit of damage in McLaren for the Veloce team. But he's certainly doing a brilliant job. Of course, as you mentioned, all the drivers who finish end up picking up a point, so it's certainly worth running it to the end, even if it is going to be 2 very, very painful laps for the Veloce driver. But he does have to look on the bright side. He showed great promise in that first stint, so if he's able to hold on and be able to just bring even a small amount of points back towards the Veloce team, it'll be something he'll be able to take into the next round, thinking, I was clearly holding pace with the guys up towards the front there before, whatever happened to bring him damage. It's something that he can take in his stride.
Of course, and another driver to mention here is Turner O'Shea. Started last on the grid, didn't he, earlier on? He's now in the top 10 comfortably. Brilliant drive from him. Been a little bit unnoticed in this race has Turner O'Shea, but he's started to perform well. We can see further back Nelson Alves looking to tuck in behind the back of Nando. Max on the outside there. They come to a bit of contact. Does the McLaren and Mercedes as they head down in towards the final couple of corners. We can see Louis Welch also looking to try and pick a move. He can't find anything there, but he's going to be looking to square it up and get a move done if he can. I think it was also Leo Lund and Joris Krozen coming to a little bit of a battle as well as they went down towards turn 1, and Max still fighting hard here to keep himself ahead of the TES driver. They head into turn 1. Nelson's got the outside line. Can he get it done in towards turn 1? Brilliant move there from Nelson. Into P12 goes the F7R. No, sorry, goes to the TES driver in the Mercedes.
Yes, brilliant move there. And of course, we're going to see Louis Welsh try and pull off a very similar move, putting it into the inside and then dancing it around the outside for the second part of the corner. Brilliant stuff there from the SRC driver as well. Surely you do have to, you've got to consider at this point Max has got damage to that car.
Of course.
There's no way his pace has just disappeared over the course of 2 laps. It's not tire degradation related. That's got to be damage of some sort. It'll be very interesting to sort of see what could potentially, what potentially caused that. So we'll definitely keep a little eye open on the chat, as we could potentially be seeing the likes of Ishmael Fassi, Barry Burman, and Thomas Ronhart for interviews later on if they stay in the same positions as they are now. But something tells me they're not going to be wanting to stay in those positions. They're going to be fighting each other to try and get the first interview. Of
course, indeed. We can see the track getting darker and darker. The rain is looming around now on the circuit, but there's only 1 lap left to go. They've caught this perfectly timed. The rain won't be here in time, and if it does, it'll only be a slight drop for the final lap of this race. And it's still Ishmael leading Barry, leading Thomas on towards lap 27 and 27. They'll fight hell to nail in this race like they've done so far, but it's a final lap. This is where they get their elbows stuck out more than ever. Josh, this could be a cracking finale.
Absolutely. The DRS still enabled. No rain on circuit, as you mentioned, so It'll all be down to who's going to want to battery dump the most here, who's got the most left to play with. And you've got to consider Barry Burman here on 12-lap-old medium tyres. Ishmael Fassi on 12-lap-old medium tyres. I'm seeing a couple drops of rain here as well now. But Thomas Ronhart on 10-lap-old medium tyres again. Just the younger compound of tyre, he's going to find a little bit more pace coming through the traction zones, especially considering if the rain does start increasing, you can still see a couple more droplets on your screen as we speak, and I don't think it'll necessarily get too hard to the point it's going to cause many of these drivers problems, but it could certainly cause them a bit of a distraction as Barry Burman's having to sit and wait behind Ishmael Fassi here. He's not able to make the overtake heading into turn 8 as they approach sector 3 now. Thomas Ronhart looks like he could be the one to make a striking move.
He's pushing out onto the back of Barry Burman. They head down to turn 11, but I don't think it's enough here for Ronhart to find a move. It's not, because Barry's also got battery to use, so this could be it here for Thomas Ronhart, but Barry's still on the back of Ishmael Fassi. This could be a brilliant battle between first and second here tonight. Also over a carousel on the back of Thomas Ronhart, but the rain's getting heavier, so they're going to have to struggle through on this final lap of the race with the final few corners, but there's not long left to go. Can Ronhart look to close in onto the back of Barry? I don't think he can, but there is obviously going to be a nice bit of straight for them to try and battle towards the line, but I think it could be all over here as no. Thomas sends a dive bomb here on the last lap of the race towards Barry Burman. They'll go towards the line, but back to the front we go, and it'll be Ishmael Fassi that takes victory here for Williams Esports, and it will be Thomas who gets second ahead of Barry for P2 and P3. Brilliant battle, brilliant send there from Thomas Ronhart. Just think, Josh, a couple more laps later, what that rain could have brought to this race. But I think at the end they did start to struggle there. You could see people looking to get their elbows out, but they had to be a little bit more cautious.
Yeah, it's just that little bit of caution they end up having to bring to it. Could have potentially cost a couple drivers here and there, a couple temps. At the end of the day, that's all you would necessarily need, as we see Barry Burman just a tenth behind Thomas Ronhart. If I was Barry, I wouldn't be too happy with that move out the final corner. But again, it's not up to our discrepancy, it's up to the stewards. I think it was a very aggressive move, but it was all fair and clean, to be quite honest with you. A little bit of wheel banging's never really hurt anyone. We see it here and there. We see it all throughout the grid. It's just one of those things. And if you are going to go for an overtake, which could potentially be on the line, you would want to do it at the final corner.
Yeah. Indeed, I think the move was fine personally. It was a great move there from Thomas. He caught Barry a little bit napping going to that final corner, and that, you know, obviously got him that second place crucially at the line. But obviously a brilliant race as well from Ishmael Fassi. You know, he kept himself calm. He didn't worry too much about Barry and Thomas catching up, and just pulled away once those two had a battle. But it says on the screen, driver of the day, Tiger Hardy. And I was going to say, Josh, Tiger Hardy is also my driver of the day. Started P16, went for a really weird strategy, medium to soft. Nothing anyone else tried. And he got in P6, so for me, that is why Tiger Hardy is my driver of the day. Sorry, no, 17th. So he made up 11 positions. Absolutely superb in such a strong grid.
Yeah, it's another example of how an alternate strategy can pay dividends for these drivers and for these teams. If they're willing to risk a little bit, it can go absolutely brilliantly, as we've seen on Tycho Hardy's behalf here. But then you've got the other edge of a sword where it didn't go as well for Nando Moreira going onto that medium compound from the start. It didn't necessarily look like it was a very strong decision. And overall, started P8, finished P11. It's another one of those problems, isn't it, where you take the good with the bad sometimes, but certainly something which is going to be taken for good is going to be Williams. Well, there. Right, hold on. Let me do the maths. Hold on. Maths is difficult for me. Give me a second. Yeah, I do believe they are leading the championship.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, they've easily outscored, I think FC now by 17 points, because you got 35 for first, it's about 25-ish for fourth. They've scored what? Good part of 40, 50 points here tonight. Estevan Art, 6th and 11th. That's probably around 25, 30, maybe.
Yeah.
And of course, the fastest lap as well goes to Ishmael Fassi at 30.6. So that also helps him in his table. We look through the grid quickly. It's obviously Ishmael ahead of Thomas, ahead of Barry. Alvaro in 4th, Reece Hinton in P5, Tiger Hardy P6, Leo Lund in 7th, Dylan 8th, Joris Kroos in 9th, and Louis Welch round out the top 10, followed by Nando Moreira, Tony Roche, Joel Marquardt, Nick Bonventa, Nelson Alves, Max Grosspointner, Frank Mraviak, Nico Benz, Harry Lai, and Valentin Taivar. So that's a full grid, all 20 drivers, and we'll see if we can get the top 3 in for a quick interview, obviously being Ishmael, Thomas, and Barry.
Absolutely, but dare I say, Nathan, I don't feel like I would have been able to enjoy that race if I wasn't in the comfort of the GTM Mega Gaming chair. It's absolutely brilliant. I was even talking to one of my friends yesterday about how it started to mould to the way I sit and how I always have one leg up. It started to mould to that now as well. I didn't think it could get much more comfortable, to be honest with you.
They're brilliant chairs, and I couldn't have asked for a better one. I had this since I started commentating PSGL, which is actually, I think around like literally 2 years ago this week, and
Ooh.
and yeah, it actually coming up to me towards my 2 year anniversary. I started back in F4 with Josh season 13. Yeah, I think it's around that time, and that's also when I got this chair. So, well, these chairs are brilliant, and everyone knows that I'm on quite a larger build compared to others. And if this can hold me up for 2 years, I think it can hold many of you for double or triple that. So yeah, they're brilliant chairs, and there's no fault at all with this chair whatsoever, apart from the time I fell off it.
Yeah, but
But
that
I'm
wasn't
not.
the chair's fault.
Yes, that's my fault for being drunk on New
Yes.
Year's Eve.
Yes, bad neighbour Richards. But also to give the opposite end of the spectrum, I'm a very tall individual. I'm 6'6", about 200 centimeters for those of you who don't use feet and inches. Again, weird. Be British. Mix both of the measurements, imperial and metric. You can't go wrong at that point. But again, these chairs, beautiful, comfortable. I can easily lean back, still use the headrest when I want to. The backrest as well, absolutely fantastic. But we wouldn't be able to bring you this racing as well without our beautiful sponsors over at GT Omega, and of course the lovely providers of the little Bob toy we've got here, the little tiger, to keep you safe, and it also makes you a little bit quicker in the races as well.
Indeed, and
Fact.
we have got interviews ready to commence because we got in the interview room Mr. Ishmael Fassi. Josh, if you could drag him up without me leaking
Absolutely.
leaking the tracks, it wouldn't be very ideal. So Ishmael,
Yes.
welcome in, mate. Hello. So P1, brilliant race for you indeed. Do you think that could have gone any better?
Well, hello, first of all.
Hello.
I'm quite surprised with the win, to be honest. Before the race, we heard some lap times that they really kind of scared us, and yeah, in the end, P1. I think everything was fine. I tried to push as much as possible with the rain, even though, and I think the rain really gave me like a second chance to win due to body being on 120 FPS, which makes traction a bit worse. So yeah, I think Thomas pushed to pass Alvaro, I don't know, but we might get a double podium, which could be really, really good for the team. Double podium.
Indeed, I think you're also about to take the championship lead either way, which is obviously very good for the team. Obviously, being a little bit behind S7R and SRC, and we look at last season, it wasn't the best season at all, was it? Obviously, I think you finished around 4th or 5th in that season. But going into this season, I think you're probably looking like the strongest team of all the esports teams. So, do you think obviously we're only 4 rounds in, but do you think you can fight for this championship here this season?
Yeah, sure. I mean, Ferrari are strong. The community teams as well, RIG as well. But I'm sure we can, battle for the championship throughout all the season.
Indeed. Well, that's all from me. Well done on the victory. Anything from you, Josh?
Yeah, I mean, yourself and Alvaro, there was a 1 lap difference between your tyre strategies compared to Ron Har, who decided to go 2 laps longer on that initial stint. Is there anything you're going to take away from that heading into Austria for next week?
I really don't know. Like, the tire advantage here seemed to be a bit high. Like, it was easy to go a lot faster than people in front of you with better tires. But Austria is a very different track. You can end up from being first to, I don't know, 5th in 1 lap. But yeah, hopefully we can get a good result like this week.
Yes, lovely stuff. So, Ishmael mentioned Austria. I'm going to ask your opinion on it as a circuit. Not whether you're quick, it's just whether you enjoy it or not.
I think it's the best track for racing in this game, even though it's easy to get spun around or something. But yeah, I enjoy driving Austria. It's just that it's very dangerous, I would say. But yeah.
Lovely
hopefully we don't get that.
Fingers crossed for you, mate. Hopefully, going to be able to talk to you again next week here in E-Series. Brilliant race, mate, and congratulations once again.
Thank you.
Right, so Josh, I don't think we got
Lovely.
Thomas. We haven't got Barry in either, so that's unfortunate to not speak to P2 and P3. But we'll head ourselves back over to the intermission screen where we'll say final farewells. And if they're in the interview room now, we're not going to look again. So if they're in there,
Well, I mean, I'm literally staring at it at this point.
Because
so, like,
I swear last time hasn't it happened like twice already, where someone has joined when we're closing off.
Yes.
But this time we will close off, and this time we will not go back to the interview screen. But it's been a brilliant race, hasn't it? Obviously, here in the French Grand Prix, it was quite entertaining, especially towards the end. Many different strategies going on between the drivers, and that is in what the end made a brilliant race. Obviously, it was Ishmael winning ahead of Thomas and Barry. But obviously, there could be some possible penalties throughout the grid, because there was quite, a few elbows being stuck out by many drivers, down the whole grid. And if that's the case, obviously, of course, with there being penalties already in the game for the corner cutting and for the time penalties, it could definitely create quite an interesting result, couldn't it, Josh? In the end,
Yeah, I mean, it realistically could, but again, we don't have say over the penalties. For a lot of that, I feel like it was just very hard, very fair, very aggressive racing. While there are some circumstances here or there where people may or may not have got spun as well, it's a very tough one. We can't always get everything we want on a broadcast as well. But again, thank you to everyone, as Bob is currently struggling to sit on my shoulder. Thank you to everyone who has been involved in this stream. The graphics making, of course, yourself, Richie, as well, and all the drivers for partaking, and everyone in chat as well for interacting, giving your opinions, and creating, yet again, another brilliant environment here at E-Series. Probably one of the reasons why it's probably one of the best leagues out there so far.
Indeed. So we'll be back next week yet again for the EOS Championship at Austria. Could be an interesting one, but we'll see what happens once we get there. So, Josh, of course, thanks for being alongside me here tonight, and thanks for everyone in the chat yet again for being here all night, and also to the drivers for taking part in this event. So we'll be back next week. So until then, have a good one then, and we'll see you then. Goodbye.